At this time, I'll call to order the Kodiak Island Borough Assembly work session of Thursday, October 9th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m., and we are in the Assembly chambers. The first item we have is citizens' comments. The local phone number is 907-486-3231, and the toll-free number 855-492-9202. And citizens' comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Anybody wishing to call in or come forward, please do so at this time.
Hi, my name is Christina Van Hoogmode. I was a candidate recently for the Borough Assembly, and it is to be determined whether or not I'm going to be on the Borough Assembly. Unfortunately, I had a misunderstanding and wasn't available to apply for this position myself, not for lack of wanting it. I just got discombobulated with the legalness of running for the office versus applying. But I wanted to come today in support of my competitor and friend Carolyn. I sent out a message to all of the candidates that were running for assembly so we could get together and go over ideas. And she was one of the first to respond to me, and we were able to sit down. She showed up with all of these notes from previous assembly things, this research, all of this background knowledge. Caroline is somebody that does her homework. She's got a background in marketing. She's organized. She's focused. She's thoughtful. She's worked at EMS. She's got a lot of the good skills, and I was frankly very impressed when I met with her. So I just wanted to get up and thank everybody who voted for me. Thank you for the public. And I would like to support Caroline.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any calls? Anyone else wishing to come forward and speak, please do so.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dee Monroe. I'm also here to express support for Caroline Roberts. I've known Caroline and her husband for many years now. They're wonderful people, hard-working people. Some of the best team players I've ever met in terms of how they perform in their respective teams and their roles in this community. Caroline's super involved in the community. And like the other person just said, she's super knowledgeable. She has lots of credentials that make her a pretty good candidate for figuring out the types of problems that an assembly seat would have to deal with. Caroline and her husband they're wonderful parents, very family oriented. They have worked their butts off to make Kodiak their home over the last few years. All they ever talk about to me when I go visit them is how they want to make Kodiak a place where Kodiak families want to stay and grow here and prosper here. They're very excited to seize any opportunities they can to create opportunities and chase opportunities that make that a reality for Kodiak families. They're both very invested in their roles in the teams that they're a part of here in this community. They're here to stay. They're very interested in the long-term success of Kodiak, and they're very excited to make that happen. I know Carolyn is very hardworking, like I said before. She's very capable, and I know she's really interested in making Kodiak work for Kodiak families. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience that wishes to come up and speak under citizens' comments? Do we have any callers? Seeing no callers and no customers, we will go ahead and go with the work session here on agenda items. And the first thing we have is discussion with Senator Gary Stevens and Representative Louise Stutz. And I'd ask you to come up to the table, please, and let you guys, address us. Thank you for being here. It's not too often that we're able to get both of our senator and our representative and Mr. Hickey, our lobbyist, in the same night. This is great. Gary, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pleasure to see all of you, to be with you again. This is the 26th year that we've had a chance to get together and talk about issues on the state level that affect the borough. My 26th and last year, so this is my last chance and to talk to you. And I do hope you'll come to Juneau. I think it makes a big difference during session when we're discussing issues that affect you so seriously. I think right now we're in sort of a tough time in the country, and I'm hoping that we can make sure that the state's rights continue, the state's rights and the state control of so many issues. That's really important. We have a limited amount of savings now, so that's affecting a lot of things that the state is going through. There's something going on with the former commissioner of revenue that could be detrimental to our limited savings. We'll see how that turns out in the end. I hope you all had a chance to read an editorial recently by a former commissioner of revenue that was in the paper in Landmine just today, I think. It's really important to read that because what he makes very clear as a former commissioner is that those folks who think that we're going to have a $3,000 or $4,000 dividend just don't know what's going on. They don't know the position the state is in. We have a budget that we're dealing with, and we have about a $2.5 billion draw if we have a $4,000 dividend. There's no way to do that without devastating the state, devastating education, devastating every department. I think if you cut the top three departments, you'd still be $1 billion short. So I think it's important. I hope you read that because it really is crucial to realize that we will continue to have a dividend. I'm sure we will. I'm sure encouraging that. It'll be a smaller one though. It will never be as we're talking about now, a $4,000 full draw on the revenues of the state. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there. And when I talk to people, even here in Kodiak, people say, that's my money. That money belongs to me, and usually you owe me a $4,000 dividend. But I hope people realize it's not their money. It's not my money. It's the state's money. And that's what we use when we need it to fund all of the programs we have going. So this coming year is going to be really interesting. As I said, my last year, my colleague here is running for the Senate and will do a tremendous job. So the various issues that we could talk about, I guess the big one would be the matter of capital budgets. We will have a capital budget this year. It's an election year. We always have a capital budget during an election year because people are out there running, and so they need to be able to go home and say, we got some projects for you. And I can promise you that Kodiak will do well in whatever capital budget we have because it has to go through the Senate. So I just caution you to be careful, to realize that the state cannot step in with multi-millions of dollars as we have in the past. A lot of issues out there that we are facing that we have not faced in the past. But still in all, we have a very important state, a very powerful state. We have some good legislation, some good representation on the national level. I really appreciate our senators and representatives, and they are out there working for us. So I'll be glad to answer any questions, but I guess the main thing I want to say is there will be a capital budget. Make sure we know, I think we do know what's important to you, what needs the borough and the city of Kodiak have, and we'll do our very best to help fulfill those. And so I'd like to turn this over to my senator in a year and a half.
I love following the good senator.
Is the mic on? There we
I
go.
love
Thank you.
following the good senator because he gets most of the, meat and potatoes out, and then I kind of pick up what he left out, which is rarely anything usually. But I will mention on the capital budget, there was a question that we have received from you people on what you could do better and how it relates to the villages. I think that Senator Stevens was pretty clear when he says don't ask for millions of dollars because it's just not going to happen. It's just pie in the sky. If you have a big project that is in excess of, say, a couple $1,000,000, break it down into segments. So we can at least look at it, and you can start a project and you can move it every year. You're not going to spend all that money at once anyway. The other thing that my office noticed, along with the senator's office, is there's some, you need to collaborate with the villages a little bit more, because sometimes we will get a capital request from the borough for the village, and then we will get a very similar request from the village for that same project with different numbers. And it makes it difficult for us. So it's easier for us if you have more of a collaborative effort with the villages along those lines. I have the list of questions, and I certainly would be happy to go through them real quick, and then maybe the senator can add to them.
Sure, Louise, go ahead.
There was, let's see, I know that there was a big issue about the $4 million discrepancy with deed. And that's kind of up in the air. As we all know, education I leave to the good senator. So I'm going to tell you the best I can, and then he'll have to clean up after me this time. From what I understand, the North Slope Borough put in an increment in, it was on the ballot, on yesterday's ballot for their school funding. If that amount is approved, and we don't know yet, we tried to find out today if that measure had passed. If it's approved, there will be no further distribution to districts. If it failed, then the anticipation is that DEED will take that $30 million and distribute it amongst the remaining school districts. Now, I'm sure that our lobbyist and Gary, did I miss something there? No? Speak into the microphone. Another one was, I'll do the testimina. You can do this one, the question. There were some questions about the testimina replacement, what's going on. I'm happy to say that I had the opportunity to take about 6 legislators, and we were going to go as far as Dutch Harbor, but the weather didn't cooperate, so we got as far as Cold Bay. But we had a wonderful time, and I'm going to tell you, that was such an eye-opener for those legislators. And we even had a gubernatorial candidate that was there with us. And it was such an eye-opener to see how important that marine highway system is, not only to Kodiak, but to coastal Alaska. So the timeline is the anticipation that it will go out for an RFP on November 30th. The problem has been, of course, the lift. And there was an issue with the shipyard working and getting the Made in America qualification, so they had to deal with that. And then they had to deal with having a warranty, the shipyard having a warranty on those additional, the elevator lift for it. So Craig Tornga, who is he's overseeing the construction and sending this out for bid, has been dealing with all the shipyards, and they are now right at the edge where they've got all the wrinkles worked out. So they're figuring October 30th as industry bid day, November 20th, the actual bid will go out, and the estimated delivery is the first quarter of 2029. Now, the Alaska Marine Highway representatives, and I haven't personally confirmed this, but I'm presuming it's Craig Tornga. He usually handles these things himself. Will be on Kodiak on the 21st of this month. And so I will let Nova know where he will be and what time he will be there. So that's another one of the questions I'll let,
Sure. So the issue of the fishing industry, we are a fishing community, a very important fishing community, and we are facing a lot of challenges both on a federal and state level, really concerned about what's going to happen to NOAA, what's going to happen to the weather services. Those are issues that affect our industry in a very serious way. It'd be no surprise to you to learn that I've had some issues with the governor over the years, particularly when somebody said, how do you have an effective legislature? And I said, well, the governor would call us into a 30-day session on August 2nd. We met on August 2nd. We overturned 2 of his issues, and we adjourned. So that's one way to be efficient and effective. Don't keep people around for any longer than you need to. And to realize that, of course, the legislature holds the purse strings. Absolutely. I mean, that's the big power of the legislature. The governor cannot spend a penny that we have not authorized. It has to go through the legislature, any fiscal issue at all. So I'm really concerned about a couple of the orders the governor has put out, and I just promise you that we'll look very carefully at those, and if they don't do what they should do for our industry, they won't make it through the legislature.
so I think that in that he's you asked specifically about the AO of 359 and 360. And the 360 is the AO that essentially says, when we request to permit something, if we don't hear from you within a number of days, we're going to issue the permit. So there's going to be some issues going on. We certainly need to ensure that the governor isn't overstepping his authority, as regulation cannot change state law. That's the bottom line there. So if a project doesn't meet standards or endangers a salmon run unnecessarily or something along those lines, it shouldn't be permitted. It's up to us as a community to keep one eye on that. We need to make sure that that our authority is not being overstepped once again by the governor, which is pretty regular. The AO 306 does involve quite a robust public process to ensure that we don't get willy-nilly mines permitted anywhere they want to go. So that's another thing that we need to keep an eye on. But I think that our legislature is pretty conscious of some of the shenanigans that have gone on in our, as the senator said, we all need to keep an eye on that. And if you see something that maybe Gary or I have missed or is a concern to you, please don't hesitate to call our offices, because we're right there. Let's see. And then there was, what fiscal year 26 Community Assistance Fund distribution level should we budget for? The community assistant distribution for FY26 will be $23.3 million. The House included an additional $6.7 million that was not adopted in conference committee. So when we went to discuss the budget, it did not happen. So barring further action, the FY27 distribution will be $20 million, enough to make the base payments only and no capital payments. So it will be up to Gary and I to try to push forward to include those capital payments. But money's getting skinnier. We have a pretty tough co-chair of Senate Finance. So again, I'll drop that in Gary's lap.
Well, make sure you keep in touch with us, and you have. You've never been shy about Scott. I appreciate hearing from you a lot, and appreciate your being down there when we're considering these major issues. And I know often the local communities may say, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe it's not worth sending people down to the Juneau, but that's when you really need to be there. When we're working on the bottom line on those budgets, I'd appreciate your presence, and at least if not in person, by phone. But if you can be there during those negotiations, it truly does help a lot.
One of the questions I'd like to go back was the first one on the deed deal. The North Slope, first off, back up a little bit, the moratorium on any new bond debt expired, but it wasn't my understanding that the legislature was going to pay anything on any new bond debt. So I'm trying to figure out, one, when it hadn't even gone to a vote of the people, how it could be included in this year's budgeting when the bonds have not been sold. They have no idea what the payments are or what the interest rate is. I'm thoroughly confused.
It's a very good comment, Mr. Mayor. And I've got to say there's been some very odd things happening in the Department of Education, not when Larry Ledoux was there, but this current commissioner has been when she was a superintendent, she was really great to work with, but now, of course, she's going along with the governor's plans to change education, to make some major changes that I don't think Alaskans really want in our educational system. So we're having to work through several layers to find common ground with the Department of Education and with the governor. So we'll continue doing that, and we know how desperate things are all over the state in terms of the amount of projects that need funding. We certainly can, it's just the list is so enormous that we can't solve it all at once, but we can deal with a few of the most egregious situations, and we will do that. I think you'll find the Senate Finance Committee, and I'm sure the House Finance Committee as well, willing to delve into that and figure out and try to find some resolution for us. But it has to do a lot with the lack of communication between the Department of Education and the legislature at this time.
And to add to that, that question was asked, which is, we went to Alexi Moore, who is our the House head finance guy, and he really looked into it, and he thinks what they did was legal, but he's getting a confirmation from Ledge Legal to another interpretation. I don't know, Scott.
Okay, because, the question that leads up to for me is we're going to have I'm going to call it a major renovation reconstruction of our pool. And if we can sell bonds at a special election, or rather than wait until next year's general election, then we would be further ahead as far as some reimbursement on there. So I'm trying to figure out, as far as recommending to the Assembly, what we try and do on there, because that's part of why I couldn't understand how this was being handled when it had not gone before the voters, and yet our reimbursement, which we lost 25% to begin with, and then lost part of this because this affected ours. And Amy, you have to tell me exactly what the amount is.
1.6 million with the 25% and 254,000.
254, thank you, on there. So, but you both know I've worked the system before over the years, and so I don't have a problem trying to work it again. And I see this as possibility, so I'm looking for some guidance on what we should do in the near future, because this is a multi-million-dollar project that we're going to have.
Well, it makes perfectly good sense. If a community wants to move ahead on its own and can get the support of the public, we'll make sure that we'll do everything we can to try to get that through, and look forward to working with your lobbyist, who I've known for like 26 years as well.
Yeah.
Maybe longer than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll work together
Okay.
on that and try to find some resolution.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Larry?
Thank you for being here. The infrastructure that supports schools, the university, governmental buildings was built when it was fun to be in the legislature because there was lots of money. And I mean, one year they funded every major maintenance project for schools. You know, I don't know how many billions it was, but there was lots of money. And, you know, local economies were built upon easy access to state money and federal money, you know, to build our docks and some of our commercial fishing. And as you started the discussion with the permanent fund dividend, there is no money. I just heard that the Saudis have lowered the price, or have increased production to lower the price of oil worldwide as a part of a sanction on the war in Ukraine, as an example. And so there's less and less money every year to go around. And so all of these buildings that were built, usually funded 100% by the state, now need major maintenance. And there is no money. The state hasn't been able to go very far down the list, and Kodiak hasn't been very. So what's facing our communities are major infrastructure projects that there is no money. And so I guess the question I have is that there's been talk about different ways to raise revenue. Taxes, sales tax, income tax, other taxes. I guess the question I really have is that, you know, right now facing our community, I can't remember I think it was like $80 million worth of different projects, you know, that probably more than that actually if we include the hospital. We're going to need some money from the state unless the state finds some way to generate it. What is the scuttlebutt in the legislature of a different way to raise money besides oil revenue, or to change the oil taxation laws, if you will, to raise money? I guess that's the question, because if we don't have access to state money soon, we're going to be in major trouble as a community and other communities like us. So it's sort of frightening.
I think you're absolutely right, Larry. I do remember being elected 26 years ago, and pretty much anything you guys want, we could get for you. And that was wonderful at those times, but the times have changed. You know, when oil used to pay for everything, we had all this oil revenue, and it was wonderful. Now, oil is not the biggest amount of money coming to us. It's from our savings, from the 5% market value. And so things have changed in a very serious way. You know, I do think, talking to folks and hearing where people are, for the most part, Alaskans don't want to have an income tax. They don't want to have a sales tax, and they do want the biggest dividend we can possibly give them. That just doesn't work. I know it doesn't work, and you know it doesn't work. You know, we just can't continue down that road. So what would it take for us to get to a point where we can legitimately look at what our needs are and find a way to increase our revenues? I guess just to remind you, you may not remember, but when Senate Bill 21 passed the legislature, I voted against it. I was one of two Republicans in the Senate who voted against Senate Bill 21. It gave away enormous amounts of state monies to the oil companies. We've got to address that. We've got to find a way to get our fair share. And people always talk about fair share. Who knows what that fair share really is? But we are not getting our fair share on oil right now. We're depending overly much on revenues from the permanent fund, and that has saved us. But you know, terrible things can happen. Oil can go down. The price can go down, and in fact, at one point it was down minus. You know, so people were producing oil and getting less money than it cost to produce it. So that's entirely possible. I hope that never happens. But we've got to address that. As someone who's leaving the legislature, I know we won't do anything this year on sales tax or income tax, but I think we've got to address an income tax, not to keep a permanent fund dividend, but in order to pay for the needs of our government.
Well, I'm listening to this, and you know, insofar as generating revenue, and I've thought about this, and there's a lot of different opinions. And you said without addressing oil. Well, we could address the oil without increasing the tax by decreasing the credits that the state gives them. And let's make it a little more transparent. You want a state oil tax credit? Apply for it. Let the legislature appropriate those funds for the credit. But I'm telling you what, that would increase our revenue to the state.
Agreed. Bo?
Thank you. Through the mayor, to expand on what an income tax would look like, a lot of people have approached me about that topic. And well, so we're under fiscal constraints here. We have very little room, if any, now to continue asking more of the community when this is just contributing to outmigration. School enrollment, I believe, is down another 75 students this year. Folks aren't moving here. It's just getting too expensive. Sure, there's other factors at play, housing and things like that. But a question I get asked a lot is, has our state legislators done any sort of projections or estimates on what a very small income tax would look like? And the reason they get asked this a lot is we see it a lot here, and I'm sure other communities do as well, is there's a lot of transient employment. So folks come in, whether it's tourism related or commercial harvesting, come in, make a vast amounts of money, and then they leave. And a lot of people don't even touch foot on land. And so that's the frustration that we're starting to receive now, is we keep asking more of the community. We need more and more and more to fund our services and our infrastructure needs. Whereas folks can come in, work for 3 months, and they don't contribute very much. I understand contributions via fuel and groceries and things like that are great, but has there been any sort of calculations for what a small income tax would look like?
Yeah, sure. A lot of work has been done on that, Bo. As someone who is now finally looking at full retirement, I've read all there is to know about what states are best to live in. Alaska is one of the highest states, one of the best states to live in, because we have no income tax, and we have no state sales tax or state property tax. So, yes, we have looked at that very carefully. As you know, working on the assembly, you may have a wonderful idea, but if you're the only one who thinks that way, it's not going to happen. That's the problem we have in the legislature. We have a lot of folks who are absolutely unwilling to ever consider paying our own way, income tax or sales tax. So we do know that it's going to be costly to have an income tax. I mean, you have to have a large staff. I wish I remember the dollar amount that would cost us, but it was in the many millions of dollars to staff something like 25 people to make sure people are paying their income tax fairly. But you know, I was here in 1970 and first got to Kodiak, and we had a state income tax. It was based on the amount of money you paid the federal government. Was it 5% or something? There was a percentage.
Between 5 and 10.
5 to 10, yeah. You paid the federal government, and then you do 5 or 10% of what you paid to the state. So it can be a very simple project, a very, very simple process. So yes, we have been looking at that. There's been a lot of discussion. The problem is, as I say, getting 60 people, 40 in the House and 20 in the Senate, to come to an agreement on the best answer. So yes, it's out there. You know, this is a terrible thing to say, but I think we have to see the bottom of the barrel before we get smart enough to realize how we solve our own problems. I don't think things are going to be solved in the next couple of years. I think it's going to get worse. And but maybe that's pretty negative, and my colleague here has to be a little more positive. But I do think things are going to get worse, and that's when people are publicly going to say, okay, let's solve this issue. So the legislature doesn't make its decisions in a vacuum. Like you have to talk to your constituents and find out what people are willing to do. But I think we're reaching the point in a couple of years we've got to address that.
Yeah. And
Well,
the income tax was a percentage of your federal income tax that you paid.
At this point, I'm going to dump on the Senate because I think it was either 5 or 7 years ago, the House had a sustainable fiscal plan, and it included, I think it was 3% of your federal tax as a state income tax. It was like a four-legged stool. We touched everything that affected Alaskans, and it passed the House, but we sent it over to the Senate, and they said, we are not having anything to do with this, and they never heard it. Had they heard it, we wouldn't be in the trouble we're in right now. We would be pretty fiscally stable. So, you know, we can try it again, but right now you have to keep in mind that this governor has said unequivocally, with no exception, he will veto any new tax. As you saw with the online company taxes that he vetoed. So that's kind of where it is.
Especially with it going towards education. I was surprised.
So I certainly have no problem with an income tax. I think it has to be looked at. I've been Senate president for 8 years, and occasionally you look behind you, see no one's there. And the issue is, as you well know, you've got to get the majority to agree that this is the right thing to do.
Thank you. Any other questions? Steve?
I don't know, question per se, more comment. One of the income tax issues, as I see it, is people who do come from down below earn money here either through fishing or whatever and then leave, making sure they pay some sort of Alaska income tax because that's where they earned it versus just going back to a state that either has very low or different income tax and blowing Alaska off. And that's going to be, at least in my opinion, a complication in figuring out how to implement any sort of income tax. But without it, it's greatly unfair.
Well, that's a good point, Steve.
I don't care whether you're talking the Bristol Bay fishermen, who a lot of them are from down below, North Slope workers. The remaining people in Alaska would be unfair treated because those people should be considered as part of the income from Alaska and should carry part of the burden.
Sure, Steve. It's fishermen who live outside of Kodiak and outside of Alaska. It's North Slope workers who live in Texas. Those folks are not being taxed. We got to find a way to tax them. But unfortunately, it's not as much as you might think. We've had the studies made, and I think it's like $200 million. I mean, $200 million is a good chunk of money, but it doesn't solve all of our problems. I mean, we have a $6.5 billion budget. $200 million is nice, but it doesn't solve everything. So you're right. I mean, everyone has to be treated fairly, and we've all seen it. We've all had people that we know who fish in Alaska and live in Seattle and do not pay anything into Alaska's coffers or volunteer for agencies or serve on borough assemblies.
But, and not only that, you have to take into consideration, they come up and use our resources. They drive on our roads, and unfortunately, it's unconstitutional to tax just them and not us too. Otherwise, I think that would have been a slam dunker.
Yeah, sometimes the Constitution gets in the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other? Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank both of you for the candor on the permanent fund discussion. It's long been a massive pet peeve of mine personally when folks promise the sky on a PFD or pretend like that was the intent of the legislature that initiated it. I've still got campaign material from the original establishment of the permanent fund that clearly states oil revenue won't last forever and we need to have a fund to prepare for that rainy day. So thank you, because it is difficult as an elected official to say that some pie in the sky PFD is not possible. So it's appreciated.
Thank you, Dave. Our current governor, has won twice by promising a $4,000 dividend. And I know he knows that's not possible. I know that's not possible. Anybody who looks at the books knows that's just not possible. So I just say to anybody who's running for office, for God's sake, don't say I'm going to get you a $6,000 dividend. That's how the full dividend now would be $6,000. It's just not going to happen. And if you're only trying to pull the wool over the public's eyes if you say I'm going to get you a full dividend. Not the case, never has been the case. Or it's not been the case for the last 8 years anyway.
You immediately lose your credibility.
We all thought so. So I want to thank you for coming tonight. It's always a pleasure to see you guys. And I've enjoyed visiting Juneau as an assembly member, Kodiak Island Borough Assembly member, and as Kodiak Island Borough Mayor. But I'll come visit you as a private citizen, Alaskan. So.
I
Please
just
do.
want to say one thing to remind you all, and I never try and forget this, and I always try and remind everybody, we're very lucky here in this district because your senator and I work together very well, and we have during my tenure, and we are two of the very few, I would say, senators and representatives that have this kind of working relationship. And guess who the beneficiary is? Our district.
All of us.
Yes, and so I just remind you that, you know, if Gary's tied up, you can call my office, and if I'm tied up, we work in tandem.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll take a 5-minute break and then move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the water. Good call.
Thanks so much, Scott. Glad you're still here. Good to see you, Larry. Great job. Good questions. Thank you. Yeah, of course. Good to see you again. Good to see you. Best of luck, Dave.
Thank you, Senator.
There's real laws in politics. One of the laws of meetings. That's right. Not running off to the head.
No. It can last a little while longer.
That's what, no, I think sense. And I think that was a good thing that Scott was, because Ryan was very critic. It took 1 year and he was converted. He was like, no, we need to like finish it. And I don't know if that was his intention, but probably not. But no, I thought it's shrewd, and I think yeah, absolutely. Okay, so when I went through it twice, they interviewed, and then they immediately went into executive session, and they talked for 15, 20 minutes, whatever, and then they came out and let you know. Okay, you know, but I think when we did it with Ryan, I think it was like an open vote. We interviewed, and then we really didn't discuss, and then we just took a vote the following week, if I remember right.
How you doing, Scott?
Fine.
I'm a little nervous about our school budget. After the
There's 700.
No, I'm just talking about after the election.
Meaning what?
I mean, Jeff Woods, I don't know if you listened to the candidate forum, but he was like, why would we keep giving money they fit their family?
You're talking about the election for the board.
Yeah,
They don't know what they're talking
I know they don't. I'm just,
about. And they're not going to get very far with us.
yeah.
I think that items and white sides are iffy things, but you and me and will do fine.
Hope so.
And we have guidance from Jared.
You know what?
I don't think we're. I think it's unusual, would be unusual if we moved off of the position we've had for the last 10 years or so, which is essentially fully funded.
Yeah, from the ask. Yeah. Sorry, Larry, didn't mean to steal your seat.
I'd rather have it stay warm.
The problem is.
Well, good, I farted in it for you.
Well, thanks.
Even with the 700 increase to the BSA, they're gonna have to cut left, right, and center again this year.
Yeah.
Well, I think they budgeted for, what, 60 people to not be in the district this year? Pardon?
Yeah, something, yeah.
So,
It's 78 at this point,
Luckily,
but that's only the first few days.
they also only budgeted for 280
pardon?
or 380 for the BSA.
Yes.
Well, they got more money from the state than they expected, so
Yeah.
it should be okay this year.
Yeah, but still, they're in a deep hole.
Oh, yeah.
And of all the districts in the state, we're probably one of the better ones.
I know.
So,
Yeah, when I was at the school board conference 2 years ago, we were still doing good. The others.
Juneau's a mess.
Okay, we'll go ahead and reconvene the work session.
Leadership.
And next is a presentation from a borough lobbyist, Mark Hickey. Please hold it down in the back. Yes, please sit next to Amy. Welcome to Kodiak.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the Assembly, and everyone else. It's always an enjoyable trip for me to come out. I think Gary's right. This is my 26th time coming out on your behalf with the borough. So I was telling someone the weather is always perfect when I come, and it honestly has been, except the one time I brought my wife, and it rained like cats and dogs, and we live in Juneau. And I haven't been able to get her to come back, but hopefully I will. It's hard to say there are really extra special, beautiful spots in Alaska, but Kodiak is one of them. Well, good evening. Am I coming through okay? I don't know that Senator Stevens and Rep. Stutz left me a lot to say, but you know me, I probably have a few things. There is a report in your packet. I'm not going to go through all those. Happy to answer questions. Before I made some notes on some of the things that came up. The discussion about income tax. Department of Labor put out a statistic, I may have this slightly wrong, just within the last year, less than a year, 25% of the Alaska workforce is out-of-state workers. Now I knew it was high, because there's always been this discussion about capturing, as Louise said, the folks that come up, work here, earn income, use our services, and leave and aren't contributing. 25% is a pretty sizable number. There was a question about the work that's been done on the tax, and there's been a lot of work done. There's been a lot of work done looking at state sales tax, looking at income tax. There was a very serious effort that came out of the House when Paul Seaton was still in the legislature from Homer. And it was a modest tax based on your federal, like the old prior tax had been. That went away, I think, in '78. Just as an aside, Governor Hammond, who was the first governor I worked for, I heard him say many times the biggest mistake he ever made was signing the bill to repeal the income tax. Instead, he should have signed a bill that sunsetted it and then forced the legislature to come back and deal with it again. Because, and these are just my own opinions, and I'll move on to topics that are more objective, but it has created a system with the dividend and the lack of some type of broad-based tax that's paid in the state where, you know, we fight over what the dividend's going to be. We fund as much as we think we can fund of state services, and we're not looking at what is actually needed. And there's always areas that can, as a commissioner of transportation for years, always areas that you can find reduction, but it's backwards. It just is, it's not how we ought to be running things, but, and the income tax is more cost effective for the state to operate than the state sales tax. They've shown that in terms of what they would have to, as long as you base it on the federal tax you pay. So I'll just thought I'd mention that. I just want to hit some high points, and again, some of this will kind of blend over with what you heard from Gary and Louise. Our fiscal status, I put some numbers in there, and it's effectively, we're in a flat situation as far as revenue available, and maybe on a continued decline. Oil prices have dropped about $4 a barrel just in the last week. So currently, right now, for the current budget, the oil prices since July have been a little higher than predicted, which is what the budget was built on. Production's been a little lower than they expected. So if nothing changed and you got to the end of this fiscal year, they probably would be okay and wouldn't need much of a supplemental. Of course, a big unknown is what's going on in Washington. And it looks like we dodged a bullet on Medicaid for now, maybe, but there's just so much uncertainty about from day to day. You saw what happened with Central Air Service this week. No, it was cut, not going to pay it. Now they found money and they're paying it again. Just got announced yesterday. So it's really hard to know what you're going to look at, but you're not going to see new revenue showing up this fiscal year that is going to create a surplus. And so then you look at for next year, which is what the budget will be built around for fiscal year 27, and the projections are slightly lower oil prices, a little bit better return on the permanent fund in terms of the amount of money that's available, which is part of it's used for the dividend, part of it's used for services. But if you had to predict, I think we'll be lucky that it stays about the level we're at in terms of available revenue, short of doing something new. And then you're going to start seeing some production coming online from these projects. And I was just reading through some of the information on that, and because of where the projects are on the slope, the state's share of revenue it's going to be helpful, but it's not going to come. A little bit will start coming in 27. A lot of it's not going to come right away. And because of the way our tax structure is set up, there's a deduct on the capital investment that the companies can make for what they would otherwise owe. So, you know, if anybody's sitting thinking this new production that's out there that's coming online, Willow would be one of them, Pitca's another. I don't think, from what I see, that you can count on a lot from the state money. And it's just going to create this pressure to come to terms with what Gary and Louise are talking about. When are we going to confront, we can't keep doing the same thing and think we're going to be where we need to be. And it comes down to the folks that run for governor in particular, because this governor will not sign a tax bill. Gary was polite and didn't mention that his very, very modest e-cigarette tax bill, which was passed in order to deter youth usage, the governor vetoed that because it was a tax. And he'll probably veto it again if it gets passed. The school debt, I spent some time with Department of Education today trying to get an update on where things are at, and I think Gary and Louise gave you the right sense of things, depending on what happens with the North Slope Borough bonds. And I've been looking to find results because it's from the Tuesday election. They're not out yet. If that passes, the expectation is there won't be any additional money in the current year to cover that, possibly redistribute some of that $4 million and make up the $250,000 that you lost. That said, I know I talked to the House Speaker when they were in town for a special session. I talked to Senator Stedman, who's the co-chair of Finance and has the operating budget, and I think there will be interest in trying to do a supplemental on to get that money back. And what the governor will do with it, I don't know. So I would say it's not absolutely out of the question. One of your questions was the revenue sharing or community assistance, and Amy had given me your numbers, and the current distribution is down about 22%, which is what you would have expected with the reduction in the total program for this year from 30 million to 23 million. And I don't think you're going to see any new money there. And then for next year, unless the legislature does something different, the available money is 20%. or I'm sorry, 20 million, which would be a 33% reduction from your money that you had 2 years ago. Now, the legislature, if the money is there, they've tried to plus up the program. Louise mentioned the House had something in that would have done that, but the Senate rejected it, which is the first time that's happened in a while. But the governor has also vetoed those efforts. So I don't think you can, it's possible you'll see getting back to the program, a total of 30 million, but I wouldn't count on it. There'll be effort to do that. Session challenges coming up. I put them in the report. It's sort of the same list. Things change a little, but it's not completely. Community assistance is one of them. K-12 funding. We did get the BSA increase. They overrode the veto. That should be the budget that will be available. I think the likelihood of additional efforts to increase education funding for this next session is very unlikely. I wouldn't expect that. There is this task force that I mentioned in the report, and I gave you some links to their work. It's a legislative task force. They've started working. They don't deliver a report until January 27, and their primary focus is funding. And they'll probably look at any number of things, including changing the area cost differential, redoing the foundation formula, which the last time that happened was the first year Gary was in the legislature, I think. It's been 25 years, maybe even a little longer than that. So that, I'll be watching that, but that task force and its work could have a big impact on changes, but I don't think you're going to see much result show up this next session. It would show up with a new governor the following year. There was a issue, I don't know how much it affected Kodiak, where the Department of Education wanted to promulgate these new regs on changing what counts for local required contribution, and it would have had a negative impact on the ability to count some of the types of things that have been extra services like snow plowing or school support, school sports support, things like that. Finally, the department recommended to the board, and the board voted this morning to postpone those regs. That was in the paper the last couple of days. So it's not gone away, but it's been put off. It's just one more thing in the education world to have to worry about. I want to go back to school debt for a second. I think what Louise told you, that there are people who, her finance person looked at what they're doing. I think that it's correct. It is legal, because the way the school debt reimbursement works, it's based on the current year payments. And even though they probably wouldn't have a sizable initial payment if the debt's approved 2 days ago and they're able to issue it, they will have, apparently will have some debt that they'll have to start paying. And so there's other programs the state runs on debt reimbursement where it's based on your prior year payment, and that's not the way this works. To answer your question, Mr. Mayor, the moratorium is gone. There was a lot of discussion about keeping it in place, and you might see an attempt to bring it back, but right now, municipalities can issue new school debt under the program. The rates aren't what they used to be. They're, I think, almost entirely 50-50. It depends a little bit on whether you're doing an approved project through deed or not. So we probably should have more of a talk about the pool and what you want to try and do, because I think when that was built, it was still able to be I may be wrong, a 70-30. I know we got the high school renovation 70-30. But a key question is whether your education people, your staff, have put the work in to go to the Department of Education to go through their process. And we would need to look into that. But the moratorium is lifted. And so I don't know else, what else might be possible in a short term, a special election and getting participation, but, and they didn't anticipate it in their budget. One of the frustrating things with what Deed did with the surprise when they showed up and said, oh, we're only going to give you a 69%, not the 75%.
75.
They had that number when the budget was given to the legislature back in December. Nobody knew about it. It was only after the fact that any of us saw it. So they could have easily gone to the legislature and said, no, this is what we need. Guess it doesn't matter at this point. We're left with what we're left with, and our best hope is a supplemental to get at least that 250,000 back. Tustamina replacement, I think Louise let you know what that's like. It's consistent with my understanding. This time they do expect they'll be successful at getting American shipyards to respond. The last time they put it out, they zero response. I am told they haven't completely resolved the Buy America problems, so they still are trying to figure that out. They are planning somewhere in the late 2028, early 2029. I think Louise's number probably is more current for the vessel being completed. Probably doesn't mean it would go in service. There'd be a lot of steps that would have to happen to get it ready. So realistically, I don't think, assuming everything goes forward, you're going to see that vessel until late 29, maybe early 30. But we've spent a long time trying to get to a point where they actually put the bid out. I mean, this governor stopped it for 4 years until the re-election, and then all of a sudden he decided it was a project he liked. Meanwhile, I think the Tustamina is, 64 years old, still kicking. I mentioned in the plan, the Marine Highway Long Range Plan process, and I gave you some links, and I spent some time updating myself on it. And Craig Tornga, who's been the director, has done a really great job. He's brought a lot of new ideas and a lot of organization. Comes out of the private sector, but seems to understand the Marine Highways is a public entity that has a constituency across the state. And I think that work product is pretty impressive. One of the things that got my attention is the plan, and it's a 20-year plan, is to ultimately end up with 3 mainline vessels, new ones. The first one being the Tustamina, which will be ocean-going. The other 2 mainline will be duplicate vessels, so they'll have standardization, which is something systems never really paid attention to. But those 2 will be ocean-going, which is awful important for Kodiak and the chain to get that service. I mean, that's the plan today. How they fund that, not yet clear. And one item that I keep mentioning that we have to pay attention to is in Marine Highway operations under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act from a few years ago. Senator Murkowski in particular was very successful at getting money to support operations for Marine Highways. It was 5-year funding. And we're coming up on, we're in the 4th year. Next year would be the 5th year. And they might renew it and keep it going because it's part of the Surface Transportation Act, which is federal highway funding that gets renewed every few years, 5 years. This situation in DC right now, I have no crystal ball. It's important to realize when that money showed up, in order to keep Marine Highways at a decent level of funding, the general fund that had been supporting operations, they used this federal money to replace. It's a little less than 50% of their operating budget. So that general fund was no longer in the operating budget. They used the federal money. Well, if the federal money doesn't continue, the legislators that care about Marine Highway system are going to have to get that general fund back in the way the budget's built. And that's a pretty big number. and I know Senator Stedman's pretty concerned about that. It's not going to be a problem yet, but it's coming up. So I think that's something that you have to pay attention to. I put in the report some updates on Department of Transportation projects. I noticed the paving going on in the apron as I came out and landed, got to do the long walk to the building. And that, they believe they'll have that done this calendar year. And I would say the most valuable thing of the report that you have in there, I updated delivery schedules. There's not a lot in the way of new projects. There's one maybe, but happy to answer questions. But if you want to look and find out current projects and how they've changed and where they're at with putting them out to bid, the expectation, I've tried to update that for you. See what else I kept taking notes as Gary and Louise covered things, so I didn't cover things too much of the same. I think that covers, those administrative orders. One of those, I think it's the 359 is efficiency in government. It's like zero-based budgeting. And I've been asking some questions about how that's going to proceed. What I've learned is right now the priority focus on is reducing grants to non-state entities, so any nonprofits. That's kind of like what's going on the federal level, something that they're focusing on. I think it was modeled a little after some of the federal activity of this the current administration. I doubt every agency's budget for the next year will be done as a zero-based budget. That's the intent, and I'll find out what departments will go first and let you know. I've seen this attempted several times, and it never really goes anywhere in terms of, I mean, it sounds good. That's what we ought to do, is we ought to just throw out base budget that we work with. And the legislature doesn't have, they're there for 3 months, 4 months. They don't have the time to go into that level of detail with the agencies. And it's too early to say exactly how that will affect budgeting in this next session. My guess is it probably won't change a lot of things. The other administrative order, I think Louise gave you a good accounting on that, and that's the reduction on regs. There's some goals in there about reducing by, in 2 years, 25% of all state regulations. Okay. But they are focusing first on permitting with DEC, Fish and Game, and DNR. So I already heard some ideas on the DEC side that, like with you, with your landfill, I mean, they're definitely something to pay attention to see what they're coming up with, but I haven't seen much yet coming out in specifics. So I wanted to mention that. I was just looking at questions that you had asked Gary and Louise. I think they covered most of them. One question was potential for supplemental, other than the what I've already mentioned, the school debt. I'm not hearing that there's an interest in doing that. One thing, and it's very premature to get too much into this, and we hear this every so often going into election year, but there is some discussion behind the scenes, and I just asked Senator Stevens about it before he left, of doing a bond packet, GO bonds, which would then go in front of the voters, which is how we funded lots of things for years. It would probably be modest, and for it to have a chance of passing, not every district has to have something in there, but generally there has to be pretty good statewide coverage. I think it'd be important as you go through your process for your capital budget preparation to just put that into the mix. And I'm obviously happy to be part of conversations and talking about that because it may be an opportunity I mean, otherwise, capital funding is just getting it out of the regular budget. It's just, it's not there. It's the first thing that goes in this environment. But if there is a bond packet, there might be an opportunity, and I mean, if you, $350 million bond, $400 million bond package is, what, 10 million for the House district, 20 million for the Senate district, if you divide it, and do the math on it. So, I mean, it's not an enormous amount of money, but I was looking at your list from last year. I know the hospital's got some things that are big ticket items and probably some other things. Might be an opportunity to pursue funding that won't otherwise be possible. So having a good idea of what, if you're asked what you would want to see, and having that answer ready, I think is a good idea. And it has to be obviously coordinated with both the senator and Representative Stutes to see what they think. But they've been very good at taking their lead from both the borough and the city on project priorities. The other thing to mention about that is our debt obligation is reduced considerably. That's one thing that's positive in the state's fiscal picture is the debt the state owes. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it's down substantially. So we haven't issued new debt for years. I'll stop there and see what questions you have. I'm sure there's something I was going to cover that I didn't, but I'm happy to see what is on your mind.
Thank you, Mark. Questions? Discussion. Jared.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So from reading your report, it sounds like Juneau is going to be on the playing defense this year, trying to defend some of the things that they've already built, and maybe some opportunities on the capital side. Do you, how do I phrase this? Are there any signals at all from the administration that they want to leave a fiscal legacy beyond just exercising vetoes to restrain revenue? Are there signals that the administration would support the bond initiatives or GO?
To the mayor, Mr. Mayor-elect, I think it's sort of two parts to that question. On the first part, in terms of the administration and its legacy on fiscal restraint, the short answer is no. The governor, as part of looking at special sessions after this last session, publicly indicated an interest in coming together and doing a fiscal plan and getting it figured out. And there's been no evidence of any it's probably a little severe to say any, but very little in the way of concrete proposals that they would do, other than we're not going to change our tax laws and solve some of the problems like Hillcorp getting a windfall of $100+ million because it's an S corp, or the oil tax credit that is eating our lunch. Louise had talked about some things that could be done. The online bill, the tax bill they just vetoed. So they're not going to support anything that's a revenue measure unless somebody gets struck by lightning and decides to have as I used to learn in my Catholic school education, an epiphany, but I don't think that's coming. And so that part, I don't see it. And then the second part again was on tell me again, the capital. On the
well, it was just that there might be some capital opportunities because it's an election year. And so I just wanted to, express gratitude for you and Representative Stutes and Senator Stevens for helping us or giving us some guidance on how to put that narrative together.
And I think that is something the administration might be receptive to,
Yeah.
depending on what gets in there that they want. Because they've got different projects that they've been working on. The WETS is sitting to access. Don't ask me to offer my reaction as an ex-DOT commissioner to it, but that's a priority that they've been pushing. So the Point Cascade extension for the ferry terminal in Juneau, they're things that the governor has as priorities that's a more straightforward game. Governor, you want X and Y, we're going to do a bond packet that's going to have A through whatever in projects. So I think I can see that being more likely coming together if the will is there. One of the problems is going to be that it all still revolves around the dividend in the process in Juneau. And they have a hard time divorcing, let's do things that we really need to do in capital from having to trade extra in the dividend, which then means less in the operating budget. So it's all kind of interrelated. But I do think the governor would be, I'm just speculating, but I think that's something he'd be more receptive to.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a couple more questions, but
Go ahead.
I'll leave it up to you.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. You talked about the education funding task force. At what point should Kodiak aim to submit testimony or provide data points, especially on like the transportation multipliers, energy multipliers?
I don't think it's too early to bring forward ideas if you've got them developed. On the other hand, I think they're they've had one meeting. They've got
Right.
their second meeting coming up at the end of the month, I believe. And they're all virtual. You can follow them. And I think I provided a link to the website where you can find that information. And I'll be monitoring it. So as they move further into their work, I think we'll start seeing a little more focus on things they're thinking about, and it might be easier to kind of let that happen and then come in
Right.
and react. On the other hand, if there are views that you think that the borough thinks the assembly we have to do, I don't think it's too early to let them know that, and then you can amend, adjust to react to their proposals. But I don't think it's immediate. They'll be doing this, I imagine during session, they'll meet a little more frequently. But I'll be watching it, and I'll be able to offer through Amy any ideas about things that they're up to. And I usually have access to whatever it is they're looking at. Right now, they're basically getting briefings on the state of affairs. And they've got this disparity test issue that's tied up a little bit in this change in the regulations, and at least they argue that it is. I'm not convinced that that's accurate, this change in local required contribution. But, I mean, there's some immediate problems for education funding that I think the task force is going to have a hard time avoiding working on versus trying to take a more global view and say, well, in the future, we ought to be doing these things. They may get wrapped up in a little bit in the short term. Part of it all, our former Commissioner of Education can probably weigh in here, but it doesn't always come down to dollars and cents, but it does. It's the biggest part of that whole discussion, and at the same time they want to, talk about performance and things that need to be done to address that, and that's where the governor comes from. But I'm no expert, but it seems like they have a hard time realizing what really is going on in the districts. Not to say there aren't problem areas in terms of the quality of education versus what they perceive is the problem. Yet, at the same time, the more problems you have with recruitment and retention of education professionals and teachers, which is growing as a problem. The numbers are staggering. A 25% turnover in the rural areas annual. At some point, it's not surprising you're going to see poor performance, class sizes growing. And one thing I didn't mention that I do want to cover, the pension bill. That did pass the House. It is now in the Senate. It is pretty similar to the one that passed the Senate 2 years ago. It is a modest, it's not a return to Tier 1 or even Tier 2. It's structured to be a much more modest pension, and it has safeguards built in to share risk depending on funding ratios, where employee rate can go up in contribution. That was never part of our retirement system before. I call it COLA, but it's a post-retirement adjustment, can disappear if the funding ratios, or can go down or disappear. But the current Senate organization passed that bill, actually passed it 3 times. And so the likelihood that it actually goes to the governor before the end of next session, I think is pretty high. The probability of the governor doing anything with it but vetoing it is also pretty high. And I've been working on that for years and aware of it. But it will be getting more attention in the Senate, and I wanted to make sure that you were aware that that's happening.
I want to capitalize your time just a little bit more. This one's more of, not really more of a question, it's more of like putting a bug in your ear and calling on your experience with DOT. At Swampsea, we're about to be working on our regional transportation, long-term transportation plan. And I think we're going to start discussing or looking at a model that's in Europe related to the ferry system. And many ferry systems in Europe, they have what is called like a regional reliability fund or regional stability fund. And this is like they take 1 or 2% of their marine highway budget and for this fund, so that when there's long delays in service, that there is, or breakdowns, that there is some kind of economic repayment, to supplement the dollars that, a place like Kodiak, the ferry breaks down, we lose tourism dollars and fuel, those kinds of things. So so it doesn't require new money, it's just carving out, 1% of DOT budget for some, like an insurance program. I don't expect you to kind of talk about that right now, but it's more like just a bug in your ear that I think we're going to be talking about that. So my final question is, like, what can we do to make your advocacy easier in Juneau?
Well, I think Senator Stevens is spot on that even in this environment of not a lot of money, presence in Juneau is important. It shows your representatives that the level of interest and care, and not that they don't know that, but it also allows you to come forward and talk to some of the other key people that are making decisions in the finance committee. So I encourage that. Years and years ago, we used to do the big seafood reception and all that. Those days are behind us, but it's a good thing to do. Good communication, which I get from the manager, and I've gotten from the mayor and from all of you, making sure that I know what you're concerned about, and that if there's anything going on that you're wondering about, that it's a two-way line of communication. I'll think about that some more. It's a good question. I hadn't thought about it. I just did want to mention back on the Regional Reliability Fund, and I appreciate you bringing it up. One of the challenges is our prohibition on dedicated funds. So trying to find a way to set aside some money and protect it. Marine Highways does have a system fund, And actually, that was something I helped my administration at the department put in. And it never really worked quite the way it was supposed to. The intent was to save your revenue and spend it next year and not have a reduction in your state support subsidy, but have an incentive where if they can market better or find efficiencies, they'd have that much more money to put in service. And the way you had to do that is you had to build your budget so you were forward funded. Well, as soon as they started having fiscal problems, they stopped doing that. And so the budgets, they were building their budgets to spend the money in the current year as it came in, and it never worked. Actually, now they do a calendar year budget, which has worked really well. It's a very simple idea. I never thought of it. I wish I had, because it's worked. And so right now, the Marine Highway is fully funded through calendar year 26. And I think to do what you're saying, ideally, they would need, and it's in the long-range plan, a multi-year appropriation, and then it become more. So as Swampsy is talking about that, I'd look at the how to set up the funding for Marine Highways to give yourself a chance to be able to put something like that in place. And I'm happy to talk more about that.
Great, thank you.
Larry.
Thank you for being here again.
Yes.
Just a couple of comments. It's clear to me, at least, that the legislature is very divided, and and we'll throw the administrative department in there, and we've got sort of a triangle of power that's not really working very well. And it seems to me that during the next session, because of that, we can expect very little of real good change. There's just not enough collegiality. I think we saw that with the increase in the basic student allocation. The governor is very unhappy of being vetoed. We saw that recently with another veto which appears to be a type of payback for, and so I don't see a lot happening there. And it's been I don't disagree with you, because I think it's very important, to go lobby the legislature, because if you don't do it, they assume that you don't care. And if you do it too much, they're really glad that when you leave, to a certain extent. But I do believe that the problem with lobbying is it's generally a shotgun approach. So Kodiak can go in from the city, the borough, the villages, and then many other organizations that are concerned with the budget, and the legislature gets hit with all of them. And they listen, or their aides listen, and they say nice things. And it's important that they do that. But it also appears to me, at least from my own experience, that that's the least effective. You have to do it. But what's most effective is to have a very surgical approach to lobbying, which means you don't do it during the session. You find out who the key people are, and a community who knows exactly what they want to do. And as Louise said, and I think Gary intimated, don't ask for the moon. Be very clear what you want, make sure that you're all working together, and go out and convince these people when the legislature is not in session. Okay, and it works, because they'll actually take the time to listen to you. During the session, that's all they do is listen to people. Okay, but when you go away from the session, you can actually have a conversation with them. And very few organizations understand that. I think you do, because that's what you do all year round. But communities do not. And the shotgun approach does not work. You end up with something, but not necessarily what's in the best interest in the community as a whole. So I think it's very, very important, especially when there is no money available and it's decreasing, and that's all you'll hear is we don't worry how are we going to fund that, is that we be very careful of what we want to do, and we all say the same thing, and we plan a lobbying effort instead of just going to Juneau during the session. Do you disagree with that?
No, I agree entirely. The interim is by far the best time to be talking to people, particularly where you're pursuing a new policy change. That means that they've got to understand it and start to develop the support. And you're right, during session, 3-4 months, This legislature, I think we had 1/3 of the legislature new members. So you've got that problem of, them being educated and they're swamped. So, yeah, the kind of lobbying I referenced in terms of coming to town probably worked better and made more sense when we had money and we were doing capital projects. But no question, the interim is your best time to try and convince particularly folks that are, not from Kodiak, that are in positions of authority, that need to learn, whether it's fishing, whatever it might be. The division in the legislature is still pretty sizable. I mean, the House is a 21-19 organization. And that really adds to the challenge and the problem of doing things that need to be done and doing it quickly. Your comment about we can't expect much, and I don't know exactly how you said it, but don't expect earth-shattering changes and decisions in this next session. Absolutely, you're not going to see that. That they came together on that BSA bill and then overrode him.
It's amazing.
And I know for the district, 700 in the BSA wasn't the number they wanted, but it is in adjusted dollar the biggest increase that they've had since the formula was created. And it's the second time a governor's been overridden on an appropriation since my governor, Steve Cooper.
Well, if I could,
Go ahead and continue, Larry.
it would seem to me that, let's say that the Borough Assembly and the City Council came together and say, here are some projects that we think are reasonable, maybe they're layered, as, Representative Stute said. And then we would come to you and say, who are the key players? Who specifically, who do we need? And this is what we do in the fall, not during the session. Right now, who are the key players that we need to talk to, okay? So that we can plan a strategy, be focused, and before the session even starts, we've laid out priorities that they're already thinking about before the session starts. Because I think they pretty much, once the session starts, they pretty much decided what they're going to do and what they're going to support, give and take. And that would be where you would be very effective, because you would know who the key players are. The movers and shakers aren't necessarily the person in charge of, but that would seem to be a very effective way to outsmart the system, if you will, to a certain extent, is to do that. But it usually doesn't happen.
It's particularly useful to do it, I sort of said this before, but on the policy changes, like this education task force and rewriting the foundation formula. The borough has some defined views of what ought to be done, and area cost differential is going to be a big one, because Anchorage has been very unhappy with being number one for the comparison purposes, and there's a lot of allies on that. To me, that's where you have the best chance to succeed with your strategy of figuring out before session, talking to people in the interim. The budget side, I mean, the projects, let's say there's a bond bill and the project, what really matters there is that if possible, Borough City have kind of a game plan, there's some agreement, and our legislators understand and are on board, and you're going to have less chance to make a difference after that than our legislators and people like me that are sort of the operatives, because it turns into a inside the building process of because some legislators say, yeah, it's really important Kodiak get X, Y, and Z, but the reality is I represent Ketchikan and Sitka. I'm a lot more interested in what Ketchikan and Sitka needs, but if I can help Senator Stevens, because he's going to help me, that process. So the capital project side of things isn't as much a interim. Well, the interim is important to have your ideas and Kodiak collectively having a plan. That's important. But in terms of influencing those people, you can talk to them about it, but in this environment, it comes down to your legislators being there to negotiate.
Sure.
Any further questions, Mr. Hickey? Seeing none, Mark, I want to thank you. And once again, it's been a pleasure working with you all these years, both from up here and as a private citizen. You've been a pleasure to work with.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I have a feeling I'll still be getting phone calls. If not on Not My Way, on something.
Yes, sir. We're going to take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll start with the interview of Borough Assembly applications for the Assembly seat vacated by Mr. Ryan Sherritt. So 5 minutes. Thank you.
No, I think.
Okay, we'll go ahead and reconvene the work session. And like I said, before the recess, we're going to have the interview of Borough Assembly applications for the Assembly seat vacated by Mr. Ryan Sherritt. And at this time, I will be reading the questions, and we'll go through each of you, rotating who's going to start with the question. And I'm going to turn it over right now to our clerk, Nova Javier, and give you a little briefing on there were 4 applicants on here. Nova?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the Assembly, and good luck to our candidates for tonight. The Borough Clerk's Office advertised the vacancy per Borough Code on September 19 and September 28. Application acceptance period was from September 20th to October 4th. The following applications were received, one from Mr. Lindsay, one from Mr. Maurer, who couldn't make it tonight due to some personal reasons, but he would still like to be considered in the running for the seat based on his qualifications, and his application is on file, and you have a copy of that. Miss Caroline Roberts and Miss Brenda Schwantes. So the Assembly needs to make an appointment by October 18. We are scheduled to make the appointment on Thursday next week, on the 16th. And if the selected applicant is present at the next meeting, I will be giving the oath at that time, during that time also. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Assembly members have any questions of the clerk at this time? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on. It's not listed here, but something I'd like to do is let each of you introduce yourself. And Caroline, I'll start with you.
Hello. Thank you guys so much for taking the time for listening to all of us that are applying for this position. I really appreciate it. My name is Caroline Roberts. I've lived in Kodiak for over 3 years now, and I am applying for the seat in the Assembly because I'm interested in serving the community. I want Kodiak to be a place not only where people want to be, but where they're able to stay. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Rob.
Yeah, thanks. Rob Lindsay, lifetime here, know most of you. Larry will remind you that I wrote my name on his paper towel dispenser. Yeah, it was carved right in there. So I'm just a local boy, product of the school system here, Kodiak College. Like everybody else, you know, Seattle is a second home, it seems, most of our extended family. And coming from a great big family, and they've all moved to Seattle, and then I'm not sure, maybe I just ran them all off. But I love this place, and I cannot get it out of my mind that the best is yet to come. And so that's what drives me here. After hearing the forecast from our legislators and our lobbyists, it sounds pretty gloom and doomy, but I mean, that's just not what got us past March 1964. I mean, it's just, well, this is what we got. You know, what we got is what's right in front of us now. And you know, this thinking that somebody's just going to rain the money is not. What you do is, I mean, and I don't know anything else to do in my life but work harder. And at whatever it is, and this would be a new twist for me because I usually work with these two things, but I can be pretty effective and I can be pretty compelling when I need to be. And I think those would really be attributes for me. But yeah, I appreciate the time and the attention, and if you choose me, I'll work very, very hard. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda.
Hi, my name's Brenda Schwantes. I am a Kodiak resident. My family's been here for many generations, all the way back to Laura Olson, Anton Larson, Yevdokия Nekrasov, and Tatiana Petrovna, and who knows before that. And my heritage is here. I love Kodiak. I can never leave. I love it here. My parents are here. They live out the road. My 2 sons went through the school district here. I graduated from high school here, as did my siblings, etc. My mom was here during the earthquake. Anyway, I love Kodiak, and I am not. I've been in the grant world forever, probably 20-something years, administering grants from the federal government, and it was super duper. I wrote them, administered them, little, million, lots of money, supervised, all that, reported on the grants, etc. And it used to be super easy. All you'd have to do is call up the right guy, gal in D.C. I've testified before Congress on certain different programs requesting funds. It used to be super easy. Pick up the phone. Hey, we need more blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, we can find that. Yeah, just let us know if you need more. Okay. Well, the money's gone. The money's dried up. The money is gone. The federal government is operating. They have a huge deficit. The state, I was here, during the big oil boom when we did have a state income tax. I worked for Kathy Stevens. She was a CPA. First, before that, Keith Bryan, right above the Safeway liquor store, and used to work on state tax returns. So I know about state tax. However, 30% to 40% of our state population is receiving Medicaid. The state of Alaska has no stopgap funding measure. So basically what that means is if those 30%, 40% of people still are eligible for Medicaid, the state doesn't have an avenue out. They're still on the hook for those funds for Medicaid. I've worked in the TANF world, temporary assistance to needy families, doing case management many years. I agree that the eligibility criteria needs to be changed. I work at the Department of Labor right now. I know what the workforce looks like, and Kodiak needs industry. Kodiak can't keep asking for money. We have to make our own money. We have to grow it. And I think the Kodiak community should spend more time rather seeking money, asking for money, and spend more time thinking about how to generate revenue for our community so we can sustain it. Population's going down. So anyway, I'm a Kodiak resident and I love it here. I want to make it a great place to live.
Thank you, Brenda. We'll start with the questions. And Brenda, I'm going to start with you since you can pull that mic right back to you. What interests you about serving on the Borough Assembly?
I think, and we all may not be as, self-aware, but I really feel like I can see, I'm a thinker. I like to think about ideas. I like to not be stuck in a rut. And I really feel like I can consider different ideas without having complete bias. I know there's always bias. We all have it. Can't say we don't. We do. But I think I know that about myself, and I want good, smart ideas for our community. And, we need to become more self-sufficient and self-reliant. That's just the bottom line.
Thank you. Caroline, what interests you about serving on the Borough Assembly?
As a mom of 2 young kiddos, I bring a different perspective of young families in Kodiak. And I really want to represent that, focusing on schools. Childcare is such a huge issue here. I think it needs to be faced. And the infrastructure that makes our daily lives possible. Making Kodiak a sustainable place is so important. I think just making it a place that people want to stay and are able to stay and afford. Going off of that, looking at the housing is a major issue, and I think looking into possibilities of that would be really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob, what interests you about serving on the Borough Assembly?
Good question. Well, I think I can make a difference. I, again, think that we can just dig a little deeper. I agree with Brenda that we need to look at industry. I look at this bottle of water and we import this stuff and we've got water so much better coming out of the tap than what's in this plastic. And we're not capitalizing on the word Kodiak, but that's up to the John Q. Public to do that. But we're here to help pave that way for him. And that's, so to be an ear and listen and bring people together. I have a lot of ideas that, I've actually had a lot of ideas that, you know, in terms, I've seen the invention and go, hey, I had that idea a long time ago. But I think we need to look at using what we have to make it work harder, better, longer. I really think that we need to look into shared interests, like North Star's classic example. There's some really interesting things that we could do. And at some point in time, we're going to have to look at a question and go, well, we're going to have to do the exercise. Okay, I mean, we have no funding and we have this shortfall. What do we do? And we'll just sit down and we'll just flesh out the reality of that thing. It could be 2 years from now. And you know, I know you guys all take it serious and you're putting in your time and you're very intelligent people. I've gotten that from my other presentations with you. I appreciate that, and I'd like to share that with you and be a part of the solution.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question, Caroline, we'll start with you. What traits do you believe are necessary for being a good assembly member?
I can talk to what skills I have and what I can bring to the Borough Assembly that I think would benefit it. In my professional background, I have experience as a 911 dispatcher and trainer, as a marketing specialist, and now as a population health coordinator. In all of those, I've honed skills in communication, collaboration, also as making data-driven decisions. In my spare time, I like to volunteer as a vice president of my son's PTA at Peterson Elementary, and that has given me the experience of fundraising, writing grants, and help coordinate events. And I think that's an extremely good skill set to bring to the assembly as well. But above all else, I am a mom, and so I understand the challenges that young families face here in Kodiak, and I am also a transplant to Kodiak, so I understand the differences that we might have here that lower 48 will never even know about. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob, what traits do you believe are necessary for being a good assembly member?
Those that know me, I'm tenacious, and once I get it, I'm very, very persistent. I know pretty much what's in the ground underneath our feet just about everywhere in the urban area, and a lot of what exists in the villages, and a lot of the space in between. And I think that helps a lot when the conversation comes up. It's not on my means all qualifying. I too am raising a child, and he's a part of the system, and I'm really thankful for the teachers. I'm really, really thankful for this Filipino community that is so, I wouldn't say underrepresented, but they are such a big part, and they're not, you know, I mean, they're not running around screaming Heritage Week or anything. And I just feel really blessed by being able to connect with pretty much everybody here. I grew up with, you know, just a lot of Native kids, and back in the day, we had all the people coming in from the village to the Kodiak Aleutian Regional High School, and my parents were dorm parents, as were many others, and you know, Kodiak is its own unique melting pot, and again, I think it's so lacking in racial prejudice of any kind. It was a haven for those guys coming back from Vietnam. It's just, I've been here, and I think it will really help to, if anyone has questions about more to the infrastructure side and why are things here, because some stuff really doesn't make sense as in any community. And I think that both I and Brenda possess similar qualities in that respect. And I don't live in the past, but it's definitely shaped who I am. And I tell you what, getting another kid at 53 as a single parent is really help shape you and be thankful for a good community. Thanks.
Thank you, Rob. Brenda, what traits do you believe are necessary for being a good assembly member?
I think being able to separate bias from different ideas. I've been out to all the villages. I used to travel a lot. I just ran into Darlene Turner. She was the old state trooper detachment commander here. I know, I guess I bring history and knowledge about the lifestyles and cultures of our community. I work with a lot of Asian population down at the job center. I used to commercial fish, crab, halibut. We had 50 pots out in Women's Bay. Can't do that anymore, darn it. But and also set netted. I worked in a cannery. I worked out in the Larson Bay Cannery, and I worked at Weir's. So I really love the fisheries. I love the whole cycle of the fisheries to see where they came from and where they went. I guess my quality, what I would bring to the borough is an openness of ideas. And, there's so much that can be done. We tend to get stuck in a way of doing things, and that doesn't have to stay, it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to stay stuck in certain patterns or behavior. I'm a big, firm believer in consolidation. The IT department at the borough spends, 1 million, and the city, they're doing about the same, 800 grand, 5, 6, 8. You got to combine our local governments. I don't know how often the city and borough meet. I don't think it's that often, like maybe the lobbyist and Louise and Gary, who I took Alaska history from in the 90s, has said, we need to come together as a community, and we really do. We need to get together on ideas. We need to streamline our funding streams. And we need to consolidate into one form of government, because right now we're duplicating so much, and it costs a lot of money. I don't know if the borough's budget is 13 million or something. The city there's a lot of money floating around that could be consolidated and directed more appropriately. I would like to see that move forward. Of course, it is going to, be community-driven, and I think the community would support consolidation.
Thank you. Next question, Rob, we'll start with you. What governing board experience do you have?
Well, thanks to Honorable Mayor Pat Branson, I've got 25 years on SERCAC, and while not directly governing, we comment on the oil producers and the oil transporters that taking product to and from and within the state on the waters. It's a fallout of Open 90, which was revealed to Exxon Valdez in 1989. I have really developed a strong relationship with working between the regulators and the industry, help to create consensus and solve problems between back in the day when, we had basically Chevron in the inlet, and now it's mostly Hillcore, and in between we had somewhere around 35 or 40 different operators, and so I got to review a lot of contingency plans. It helped me to align very good understanding with Coast Guard regulations involved in that type of thing, and then how to work through a meeting process and come to a consensus. Worked with the budgetary process on that. I have spent time petitioning the Assembly on a project we were working on. Still hope to come through about restoring or increasing, or however the view is, working with the plankton offshore in the ocean eddies And we're currently working through that process with the agencies in Washington, and we'll see where that goes. And that's really helped to shape me. Also, I've gone through the 4-acre training, which really was eye-opening, that you come to realize that it's whoever put you there, that's not who you represent. You represent the board. And so at the end of the day, that's give me a good idea. I understand Robert's rules and how a meeting should be conducted, and background of been through a lot of fishing type setups as well. Participated as the fleet representative with the Serves group and got to negotiate. Actually, we had a pretty good increase on our last contract with Alyeska. So fairly familiar with how these work. Don't have as much a scope as many of you have, but certainly know my way around a meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda, what governing board experience do you have?
I served on the public advisory group to the Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Trustee Council after the oil spill for many years, so I was an advisor. I also was the chairperson of the Shunak Tribe of Kodiak for, I don't know, don't hold me accountable to the exact years, 7 or 8, 6, 7, 8 years, a long time. But I also served on that board. I was the chairperson, so I know how to point of order. I was also on the parent education, Native Education Parent Committee. I was the chairperson for that as well. And I think it's Title VI now. It used to be Title VII. So I was involved in the Native Education Parent Committee for many years as the chairperson. And I've also just served on management boards in my professional career, operating budgets and developing policy, etc. So I've got a little experience with sitting on boards and Robert's Rules of Order.
Thank you. Caroline, what governing board experience do you have?
This is the entry to my political career, you might say. I do not have much experience as far as that goes. However, I do have experience sitting on boards both in college and now as the vice president of the PTA. And at my full-time job, I'm in a meeting every single day, multiple times a day. And so I'm very familiar with how meetings work and how the agenda flows and how you need to communicate with each other and listen to each other, even if you don't agree on the same idea. It's really taking in each other's ideas and digesting that and doing what's best for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with you, Brenda. What do you see as the role of our borough government?
I see many, I'm not trying to criticize, I see, unfortunately, I see is a reactive form of government. A lot of times government in general is reactive and not proactive. So it's what comes before them. It's to act on what is presented before. I know there's a strategic plan. The last one I think was 2018. I don't know how policy driven the assembly is with that. I would like to see both the city and our borough government, borough assembly, become more proactive, become more visionary. I know that's a kind of a funny word. Have more ideas about how to get in front of it. Right now, everybody knew in the 80s, the money was just rich. Money everywhere, right? Oil. They built. They built their city song, and didn't really have good infrastructure ideas. It's easy to spend the money, but there always has to be a infrastructure, a maintenance, and a maintenance schedule attached to anything like the pool. Everything needs to be built in. And I think our form of government here can do that. We can become more forward thinking. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Caroline, what do you see as the role of our borough government?
I think the borough government is here to support the community in any way that it can. That's supporting local businesses, and really a balancing act of prioritizing your infrastructure and all of the challenges that you face. I think the borough has a really big part in making Kodiak a place where people are able to stay for a long term, whether that's affordable housing, making land available for people to purchase and develop. I think the borough has a really big say on how we can keep people here, how we can make it affordable for people to stay here for generations to come.
Thank you. Rob, what do you see as the role of our borough government?
Well, obviously, lobbying for funding and remaining in compliance with the bylaws and state law. Create the budget. We consider motions put for us by the Planning and Zoning Committee. We have to work on the long-term plan. We have to work on the short-term plan. And we have to, on the personal side, we have to have an ear for every John Q. public that's going to come up and talk to us, and the ability to remain at this while being compassionate to their needs. We have to be true to the boards and the overall overarching oath that we're going to take to become an assembly member, and uphold that oath and not be talking sideways or because we have to act with the authority and with the role that we have accepted. Beyond that, I think that it's fair to make sure that I act with one mouth and two ears, and I think that's about it.
Thank you. Next question, Caroline, you will start. What do you see as the most pressing issue the Assembly is facing?
I think housing is a major issue in Kodiak, and I think the Borough Assembly, I feel like that should be on the top of the list, and I think it is. For people to feel comfortable living here, there was a recent study done where the majority of people here don't feel like housing is affordable. They don't feel like they have the funds to comfortably pay their rent or their utilities. I think we need to look into that study and look into different ways, and I know we already are. How can we make it more affordable for people to live here? Does that look like looking for more state and federal funding, or does that look like opening up lands for people to develop? And I think if we do look into that, we need to look into restrictions or covenants or something to make sure that it's long-term people going into those pieces of land that are made available instead of these short-term rentals. We need to make sure we're catering to the person who's here year-round, working year-round, the people who live in Kodiak. And alongside that, I think childcare is a huge need. I think it kind of goes hand in hand. If people aren't able to go to work because they don't have childcare, they're not going to be able to pay their rent. They're not going to be able to live here. They're not going to be able to afford to live here. And so I think the borough should support any existing or incoming childcare companies or corporations to really encourage that to happen in any way that we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob, what do you see as the most pressing issue the Assembly is facing?
Funding. Employee retention is huge. We've got some pretty talented people here. Oh, man, the condition of our assets are, how are we going to deal with this? We got to keep these roofs from leaking. We got to keep these roads from turning into pothole city. We've got to do what we can for the quality of life and issues and support people in that. But we, at the end of the day, we're here to do the nuts and bolts of just keeping this borough functioning. That's the core responsibility. And then be opening to other issues as they arise before this board. But I think right now we're seeing that, without the funding, then we can't go on. And so we're going to have to get very creative, and we're going to have to think long and hard. And some hard decisions will befall us, and we're going to have to work as a committee and with one goal, although it's going to have many different thoughts and inputs. But at the end of the day, seeking the funding and allowing people to live here as they have and will continue. And again, I still think the best is yet to come. I feel it in my bones. It's something right around the corner.
Thank you. Brenda, what do you see as the most pressing issue the Assembly is facing?
That funding, obviously, of course, is always going to be funding. Will always, be a funding issue. Right now, especially down the road, we know that the oil industry is going to pick up. It would be great if we could capitalize on what's coming down the road. Start planning now for what's coming down the road. I think funding education is definitely a huge challenge for our community. The other, waste, landfill services, 911, all that stuff that the borough is tasked with doing, property taxes, all of that stuff. Those are always challenges that take a lot of time and review that you guys, the Borough Assembly, deals with regularly. Those are small challenges. Funding for sure. Housing, definitely a problem. I think we probably have maybe a few more houses than we did in 1979 when we lived on Malooten Lane in a one-bedroom house with 5 people because there were no houses. Same problem exists now as it did then. And I believe that's because the lands need to be opened up and made available so people can invest in a permanent home here and expand the property tax base for the borough because, as you know, we've got some nonprofits in town scooping up land and not contributing to the property tax base. So not only is our housing shrinking due to some of the nonprofits in town, so are the property taxes. We're not that causes an increase for the regular people who pay property taxes. So it's always money in education. Healthcare is a big one.
Thank you. Rob, we'll start with you on the next question. What is your number one priority if appointed to the Borough Assembly?
Wow, there's a lot. One of the things that's on our horizon is this new information that's been made for us of the inundation map, and I think that could have a lot of potential changes for us that as we see that a wave is not just going to wipe out areas of the island universally. I don't think that's the most important thing on our table, but it's one of the most exciting new things, this arbitrarily 100-foot line has, I think, forced our hand on quite a few things, and we need to focus those efforts in some places that we are quite aware of, and I think most of us knew, or that would be mostly inundated. I think to coming grappling with this, the funding and doing that forecast, and I think that exercise, and it may be done, and I've been unaware of it, but I think that may be just a take a work session and put it on the table and just go, here's the budget, here's what you got, and we're not going to have any supplemental, and we're not going to get these bonds, and what do you let go and what do you keep? So, and I think if we look at the worst and we plan for the worst and then we get something a little better, then we'll be all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda, what is your number one priority if appointed to the Borough Assembly?
Well, I think the Borough Assembly is generally driven by an agenda, which is, I think, populated by the mayor, I believe, or people who bring items forward for the Assembly to consider, discuss, and maybe hopefully come to some sort of decision on. So as an Assembly member, you have to pay attention to the needs of the local government and the community. Personally, I would like to see consolidation. I would love, the local area boundary commission has a couple different templates. They've done this before. I think, it just takes time and people's volunteerism, and that's a lot of work. So I think consolidation, and I know you've got some land plats discussing right now, so consolidation and releasing lands for public consumption, for housing.
Thank you. Caroline, what is your number one priority if appointed to the Borough Assembly?
My number one priority is to make sure that we're supporting families and making sure that Kodiak remains or becomes a sustainable place for people to live and to stay. I want people to thrive here, and I think we can enable that by making smart choices. We need to encourage growth while keeping in mind that we want to keep Kodiak's character. Kodiak is such a special place. There's nowhere like it. And so we need to make sure that every decision that we're making benefits the community, but also keeps the character of Kodiak. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda, we'll start with you on the next question. Do you have other time commitments that will impact your ability to meet the attendance requirements of serving on the Borough Assembly?
Well, if you want to compete with my gardening and my fishing and my beading, yes. But no, my kids are grown and I have aging parents that live out the road, but I see nothing outside of my 8 to 5 job that would interfere with service outside of work.
Thank you. Caroline, do you have other time commitments that will impact your ability to meet attendance requirements of serving on the Borough Assembly?
I am a full-time working mom with a kid who's in hockey, and if anyone knows that, that is quite the schedule. But when we moved here, the only family I have here is my husband and kids. We've built a family of friends who is a great family to rely on, and they have stepped up and helped watch the kids and help them get to hockey and to dance. So I feel comfortable in saying that I'll be able to make it to Thursday meetings and be prepared to the meetings and anything else that it entails.
Thank you. Rob, do you have any other time commitments that will impact your ability to meet the attendance requirements of serving on the Borough Assembly?
Ironically, the one time that I'm traveling out of state so far this year is for my annual family meeting, and I would not be able to attend next Thursday because that's the date of our Lindsay Family Partnership meeting. So yes, I do. I also have a 10-year-old boy named Reef, but he's great. And he's sat right here with us, and he's gone through meetings, so he's pretty good. He's at the library right now. I don't think so. I work for the city of Kodiak presently, and I pretty much do, you name it. I was on the roof with the mayor just the other day, and and stuff happens. And if they need, I could be fixing a water main. I could be, hopefully not, working on a sewer main. Or I might be stuck in a grader if it snows. So yes, potentially I do have some potential time commitments. Service related, but if that's qualifying, then that's a chance I'd take. But I don't watch TV, if that helps.
Thank you. Caroline, we will start with you on the next question, the last, which not a question. It's basically applicants' closing comments, and please limit to 2 minutes.
Again, I just want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to all of us that are applying for this vacant seat. I really appreciate the time that you're dedicating to this and every meeting on Thursdays and anything beyond that. I care about Kodiak, both as a parent and a community member. I just want Kodiak to be the best of its best, and I want it to be a place where people can live and stay. I'd love the chance to bring the perspective of a mom and a full-time working mom and commitment to the assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob, your closing comments.
Well, I'm just so happy to see that in a world so full of people that are fighting with each other, that we have one of the largest slates of people working on, ran for the boards this year that I've seen in a long time, and I think that's just grand, happy to be here. I would like to serve my community. I'd like to see us grow. I have a lot of ideas that I think we could work to explore some other revenue sources and some questions that have probably already been answered, but I don't know, like what is our share of the, I believe it's 2.5% raw fish tax that gets collected? Do we get relative to Kodiak's chunk of the Gulf? That's a big question in my mind. Goes up and down. As where we've lost all of our, not all, but a lot of our high dollar species, and we're basically working on whitefish. And now that Trident's pulled out but kept most of their share, we don't even, I don't know that a lot of that Kodiak, or I'll call it Kodiak, let's just say 3A fish, doesn't have anything to do with Kodiak anymore. Trident, I think they sold to Peggy Joe for $25,000, if that's got any relative value, because they're all on, it's all on big boats that we don't even see. They don't even buy fuel here. Another thing that's really ironic to me is that the heating fuel tax is higher than the boat fuel tax, and I can understand both, but I think they should be equal. It just doesn't seem quite right that it's harder for folks to pay a little more to heat your home than it does to run a big boat, and that's an aside. But I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda, your closing comments.
Thank you. Yep, I just want to say, I know what it is, what the time that it takes to serve. I'm not aspiring. I really am not like, oh, I can't wait to get on the Borough Assembly, really, because I think either of these two individuals, Robert, Carolyn, or anybody else, could probably do a really good job as well. I would commit to, I have a very tenacious work ethic. I work really hard, and I would commit to reading my packets. That's a starter. I've been on other boards where that may not have happened all the time. I would commit to reading my packets and researching the issues. That's all I have. Thank you. And thank you for your time.
Well, I want to thank all of you for participating tonight. And basically, the decision will be made next Thursday night at the regular meeting. So thank you for coming in tonight. And it's been a pleasure to see you. So at this time, we'll take a 3-minute break to reorganize. Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and reconvene Kodiak Island Borough Assembly work session. And it's 8:57 PM. Next item is discussion of available borough lands. And at this time, I'll turn it over to our borough manager, Amy Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On July 10th, Assemblymember Whiteside, along with Assembly members Ledoux and Sherritt, submitted an agenda item request form requesting assistance in drafting an ordinance to designate the Community Development Department Director as the chairperson for the Borough Lands Committee. At the August 28th work session this year, the Assembly engaged in discussion and agreed to the decision not to pursue delegation of the chairmanship of the Lands Committee to the Community Development Director. Many ideas were generated during the work session. One just great one was by me, and that's why we're here tonight talking about this. Said that all potential options for development or disposal could be presented to the Assembly, allowing them to choose the direction that they wanted the Lands Committee to take. This could be viewed as a viable approach in the land disposal process. And so in your packet tonight, I gave you a smaller version of this large map. I think the way that this is the most useful is on that map you have the individual parcel numbers, which is probably the most useful in the electronic version because you can zoom in and actually read the parcel numbers. When you click on the parcel numbers, you can find out their location, the size, where they're at, information about them. I think that's the most useful thing. We do have a Lands Committee meeting scheduled for Monday, October 13th. I'm going to let the mayor talk about that agenda. But I think the idea of having a map in front of you and looking at all the available parcels is because this has continued to be a very important and frequent topic that comes up. And if the Lands Committee isn't meeting enough or you have a direction that you would like them to take, this is a great opportunity to speak up and say if there's certain parcels you'd like them to look at first. Mr. Mayor, do you want to talk about what's happening on Monday?
Thank you. On the agenda, there be the approval of the minutes from earlier. And as part of that, there's 3 parcels in the Sleef Lane, Beaver Lake Drive area that were slated to then come to the Borough Assembly for discussion on it. It's recommended for disposal on there. Those are listed as tracts, where before we had the 4 lots out at Island Lake. The committee felt that it would be better for a developer to kind of clear the trees rather than individuals, because neighbors start fighting when somebody takes trees out on theirs and not on the adjacent one, and then the wind blows it down. So you'll have 3 parcels there. One is one of the parcels is capable of about I think 8 lots, and another parcel is capable of about 4 lots, and then there's a larger parcel that, depending upon whether it was multifamily or a small lot subdivision, could have 20 units on it. So there'll be some other discussion that'll come up at the assembly level before it gets referred to planning and zoning. On the agenda, there was a 4th parcel in what we'll call the Beaver Lake Loop, Von Sheely area on there that'll be discussed at the meeting. And then there's a potential, start with about a 10-lot subdivision that's easily expandable out at Chiniak. Then for discussion options as to where the Lands Committee would like to go or where the Assembly might like to go is part of it is Corny Hills subdivision. Also looking at Bell's Flats area. We have property out there. And then the third thing is the potential of looking at remote parcels on there. So that's what's on the agenda for Monday night. And we've had trouble getting a quorum, and hopefully we'll have a quorum Monday, and that'll proceed. And then some of that information will come forward to you. So, any questions? It's just an update right now. I guess like I said, if you get a chance, everyone's welcome. It's a public meeting on Monday, and we'll be discussing the stuff, and then you'll be able to hear and get a report back on it. Steve?
Looking at this map, and I've looked at the electronics, excuse me if it's my ignorance, but I do have a question, and there are a number of filters on there. Do you know if there's a filter for borough land only? Or could one be put on, I'm talking about on the land viewer. You can put filters on. And it'd be kind of nice to be able to do that, because there's some where the two intermix, the city and the borough. And if you're looking for open lots, and I don't know whether that land viewer has that filter or not, it's got a lot, but if not, would it be hard for them to put one on?
I would be absolutely lying to you if I told you that I understood what GIS did and what filters were available, but that seems probable, right? So I'll absolutely talk to Travis, who is our GIS analyst, and ask him if that's a possibility.
Thank you.
Any others? Larry?
Well, just to follow up to Steve's comment, it seems to me it would be really, really great to see a map that showed all the potential land available, including those owned by local native corporations that could be developed. And the reason I say that is that we have land, they have land, and in the business world, many times people swap lands depending on the value. And it could be that it would provide an opportunity for large landowners in Kodiak to sit down and take a look at what land is available, and there may be opportunities for development that wouldn't exist if we just look at our own land.
Bo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just thinking about this topic in general here, and how I envision we should move forward is, I'll keep saying it because this is what people bring to my attention from the community is, what are we waiting for? We're up here talking about it again. This is promising to see actual areas being discussed, but I would encourage the assembly and those who may be on the committee to prioritize and start things in motion. So how I view these different parcels is what can be done the soonest. If we're looking at developments that are going to take 10 years before a single house is built, that's a non-starter for me. Or is there something that, given some borough assistance, can we get lots carved out and people start building within the next 2 to 4 years? I think we need to prioritize what can happen sooner than later and what will provide the maximum benefit to the community. I have no interest in looking at disposing of lands that are going to benefit special user groups that don't have a much larger benefit to the community. My thoughts are lots in town. I love the idea of Salif, Beaver Lake Loop, and Von Shiel. Clarney Hills right here, it's flat. There's services nearby. It's centrally located. You can either go multifamily, you can look at small lots. We've mentioned this before. I think Dr. Ledoux even suggested we need to stop thinking about giant parcels of land that we're going to develop huge estates on. We need smaller lots that are more affordable for people, not only to purchase, but to build on and build on quickly. That's what I think we need to prioritize on. Our thoughts as far as what land to consider disposing. Bell's Flats, extremely popular suggestion from a lot of people. I think it's also has a good location in serving both Coast Guard needs and community needs, but I'm still looking at this through the lens of what can happen soonest, and that would be the most affordable for people to purchase and build quickly.
Larry?
Well, I think I also apologize for not saying this earlier. I think we have to be careful too, is we haven't really discussed what kind of incentives we could give for developing land, because if we sell land and get it up for sale and somebody buys it and sits on it for 10 years or 15 years. We haven't really gained anything. And we've had discussions at other meetings and even a request at some point in time to look at what other cities are doing to facilitate, either with tax breaks or there's a myriad of different things that the borough could do that once they make land available, that it actually would be used for the purpose that we have it instead of being bought by speculators and sitting on it. We also know that it's probably, I don't know, the mayor would probably know better, let's say over 500 lots, perhaps sitting empty and undeveloped in Kodiak. I don't know, how many would you say?
I don't have that number. The borough has that number, but it's not that high.
Yeah, I thought actually it was higher the last time I heard it. But in any case, the other question that comes up too, and I really appreciate the agenda and it's powerful, but part of me wants to say, part of the concern that we had with bringing this up is having regular meetings of the Lands Committee that are actively reported to the community and the Borough Assembly, because this meeting is the first in a long time. And if this is indeed a priority, that we need to both look at what land is available, but again, what incentives that we can use to facilitate development, working with contractors or land developers or individual contractors to see what we could do to make this happen. So I hope that whatever we come up with will result in regular meetings of the Lands Committee with a broad-based membership that includes large landowners, and that the Borough Assembly would spend time talking about what incentives to develop to ensure that once we sell the land, that it's for the purpose that we want it, which would be for small homes. And the other last suggestion is, when I was on the Lands Committee during my previous time on the Borough Assembly, we talked very briefly about developing small lots that large home development isn't necessarily what young people or people that are building homes are wanting. They're looking at smaller lots that are smaller than what we normally offer, 5,000 square feet lots with mini homes or small homes built on them that would meet specific criteria. So as we go into developing land, we shouldn't use, I don't like the word baby boomer, but I mean, we should use, look at current trends in housing and what is affordable to people who want to build a house instead of large lots where you have very expensive houses built on. This has happened in other communities, been very, very successful at spurring development by some of the people that we really want to, and that's our children who could find a job and live in the community that we all love. Thank you.
Thank you. Jared.
Thank you. The next Lands Committee agenda sounds very robust. I think one thing that would help the Assembly, and this could be either for the Lands Committee or the Community Development Department, is one thing that would, I think, maybe help our discussion more is if we had some kind of heat map, of showing which parcels have more potential for development than others. When we look at a map like that, everything looks equal, but to have some kind of map that indicates that these are the parcels, the ones of Salif near Beaver Lake. These are red because these have the highest potential for sooner rather than later development, or at least housing ready or housing near ready inventory. So, what we're looking for is what is the low hanging fruit, right, that we can get now or sooner, right, rather than later. Something visual or an inventory list. The map is helpful, but for me, what would help me is some kind of ranking or identification of what parcels have the higher potential that we can look at now, and then create plans for those that aren't as hot, that we can, start moving those up as we talk about these things. Smaller lots, yes, I heard from many people over the past couple of months about smaller lots, and I think Chris French had mentioned, and I'm really interested in this, cottage housing, right, where you do have a sizable parcel, but there are like between 4 and maybe 8 smaller cottage-type homes that all have a shared outdoor space, are part of one of those housing trends that Larry was talking about, that people are interested in those kinds of things. So, so anyway, I think, my time on the assembly, I think that's something that would be helpful. Inventory, and then, potential for development. Let's see those and work on those and chip away at it as we go.
Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You always try to preface saying I'm, just one of 7 votes, so my opinion matters 1/7. But when it comes to this discussion topic, we heard from 3 people tonight. For those of us who listened to the candidate forum, we heard them all talk about it, housing. And my one vote will not be in support of disposing or even considering recreational lots at this time. I don't like the message it sends to have meeting time going towards, these very remote, largely inaccessible to the average person lots, when I feel like our mandate is to look at housing. So again, just my perspective on that discussion topic. And as Dr. Ledoux talked about the carrot that he suggests for development, I like the stick. I will again just state, I firmly believe that any developable lot that we sell needs to come with a strict development covenant that allows the borough to buy it back at the price we sold it for, if not developed within a preset set of time, for that very reason, so that we don't sell a bunch of developable land to have it being sat on for even more favorable market conditions. Thank you.
Bo?
Thank you. And to expand on that, I know multiple members on the assembly have said something similar to the effect of also bidder preference for individuals. I think is really important as far as who's eligible to bid the first round. I love the idea of individuals getting first crack at these lots, and then developers, if there's any remaining lots, wish to scoop them up and do what they wish. That would be my preference as well. And then certainly open to, if lots are developed and sold to individuals so they can build a home, deferring their tax burden for a certain amount of time, certainly at least until they start building their home, I think makes sense. We're not relying on that property tax revenue now. Why would we expect to have it while they're looking to get their house built? So I think giving people enough time and enough opportunity to secure funding. So I think not only do we need to let folks know that land is coming, give them a little bit of notice. That way they can secure funds. If it's the 10-10-10 approach and it's an auction scenario, people need to have time to secure funding to be able to bid and then pay for their land. That probably won't leave your average family, young family coming to the island or trying to secure a future here, a lot of funding left over to then get their house built. So I don't think it'd be appropriate, or I suppose it would discourage growth to tax them right out of the gate. I think deferring taxes for a certain period, perhaps similar to what Mr. Jones suggested, put a sunset date on it. But I think that would be one way that we can help people that are struggling to get their first home going. I think a few of us have been in that scenario where we didn't have any support buying our first house, and it's really challenging. So I have that in mind as well.
Thank you. A couple of things I can say for it. The borough has very little land that is immediately buildable, and those are the priority ones that are on the list. They'll be coming to you guys after the minutes are adopted, and that's as I said, the 3 tracks, one on Saleef, but the more immediate are the 2 tracks on Beaver Lake Drive. When the Von Sheely one and Beaver Lake Loop could potentially need some work on that. Which will be up for discussion. The Chiniac stuff, the Bells Flat stuff, all needs road construction, and that is not happening in a year. The Killarney Hills, which is right smack in the middle of the urban area, does not have sewer, water, and roads to it. So there's major cost and expense for infrastructure, which takes a few years to get in and come through. But the property has potential. It was originally purchased as what we call the old hospital site. It was purchased for that. And that's why it was cleared on there, and there was a flat ground for a football field. Now, the issues there will be, it needs a separate line to the treatment plant for the sewer, and the water can be tied in. That's one of those things from planning standpoint. You'd look at business along Reznov, and then potential for multifamily, and then more typically R2, be it duplexes on there. So those are some of the things that you have to realize. The borough doesn't have ready lots to sell other than the 4 that you got at Island Lake and 2 of the tracks there on Beaver Lake Drive. And those are what are coming forward to you. There may be a lot here or there. I'm not aware if you wanted to, there was some undesignated there, but everything else that the borough owns needs extension of utilities on there. And so we will see what happens there, but that's, it isn't going to be, there is no ready fix except it's very small on there. So I'm just trying to tell you part of that so then Amy doesn't have to dig it all out in there, so that you understand that we've got roads to build, sewer and water to put in on property that we have. So with that, we'll move on to the packet review. And the first thing under packet review is contract number FY 2026-27, agreement for lobbying services with Hickey and Associates. Staff report, Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hickey & Associates have been offering lobbying services to the Kodiak Island Borough for 25 years now. The first contract was signed on August 3rd of 2000. Currently, the contract in place with Hickey & Associates is contract fiscal year 2020-08C, which will expire on December 31st, 2025. The proposed contract is for 2 years at $45,000 per year for a total of $90,000 for the term of the contract. In your packet tonight is a copy of the contract that we are asking permission to sign.
Any questions on it? We also have Mr. Hickey still in the audience here if you have any questions of it. I think it's been a good contract. He's done us a great service over the 25 years that I've dealt with him at the borough. I also knew of him before he was the lobbyist for the borough. So I think it's a great deal, and I thank him for the service. With that, we'll move on to, next is resolution number FY 2026-7, authorizing a ground lease with Kodiak Rodeo and State Fair Incorporated. Staff report, Amy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Kodiak Rodeo and State Fair, formerly known as the JCs, has occupied the Kodiak Fairgrounds under a 55-year lease that originated with the state of Alaska and was later assumed by the Kodiak Island Borough. That lease expires on November 3rd, 2025. Kodiak Rodeo and State Fair, a nonprofit corporation, has requested to continue occupation of this land by entering into a new lease. Borough staff have worked with representatives of the Kodiak Rodeo and State Fair, their board of directors, and with our borough attorney to draft a new lease. The lease is for a term of 25 years at the initial rate of $500 per year, which is less than fair market value as allowed under KIBC 18.40.020B. And the lease is included in your packet tonight.
Any questions for Amy? Steve?
That was, you said $500 a year?
Yes.
Has anyone compared that to what, just if it were owned privately, that land would be taxed at?
Assemblymember Johnson has asked us to find out what the in-kind service value would be so that when we're in the budget cycle next year, we would have that land value, but I haven't done that yet.
Okay. Bo?
Thank you. That's a large amount of very prime real estate. I'm not suggesting we don't pursue this lease, but I'm curious if there's been any other competing interests recently.
The only other kind of interest I've had is the Racetrack Association asked about having their own separate lease. The people who board horses were interested in maybe breaking out a part, and we did not entertain either one of those. We're keeping that all together as one parcel. But no other like commercial interest or anything, no.
Okay, thank you.
Scott? Thanks.
Why 25 years? Well, that seems like a long time for 8,000 acres when people are looking for places to build houses.
It was a 55-year lease, and
That's the past. I mean,
right.
Why are we going to the future?
I am aware. The reason it's 25 years is because anything under that makes it very hard for them to get grant money, and most of the stuff that they do is through grants. So we started with a 5-year lease with multiple extensions. That was not long enough for them to get a lease. We talked to them about what they needed in order to secure those grants, and 25 years is where we ended up at.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, next is resolution number FY 2026-8, approval of the Assembly meeting calendar for the year 2026. Staff report, Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A previous ordinance that was adopted by the Assembly requires that you establish and adopt your meeting schedule for the upcoming year through a resolution. According to the code, the Assembly is required to convene in the Assembly chambers, and the meetings are set to begin at 6:30 p.m. on the first and third Thursdays of each month. At the previous work session, we have presented you the draft calendar. You have made some changes, and those changes are reflected in the attached calendar in your packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any discussion? Seeing none, thank you, Nova.
You're welcome.
Next is resolution number FY 2026-9, ratifying and certifying the results of the October 7, 2025 regular municipal election. The staff report, Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the Assembly. The Election Canvass Board will meet on October 15, Wednesday, to canvass the election. The resolutions ratifying and certifying the election results will be added to the packet once canvassing is completed. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Larry.
I just want to take the moment to thank Nova for just once again doing an outstanding job making sure our elections are fair and appropriate. And I just think that if you were in charge of our national elections, we'd be in a different world today. You do a great job, and you take your job so seriously, and the crew that you've developed reflect your dedication. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is ordinances for introduction. We have ordinance number FY 2026-11, amending various sections of the Kodiak Borough Code, Title 17 zoning, related to child care facilities. Staff report, Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Planning and Zoning Commission at its regular meeting on September 17th voted 4-0 with 3 members absent to approve resolution fiscal year 2026-006, which forwards a recommendation of approval to the Assembly for amendments to various sections of Title 17 zoning related to child care uses. The approved resolution is attached to your agenda item. The proposed code amendment allows child care facilities in-home as a permitted use within the Rural Residential 1, Rural Residential 2, Single-Family Residential District, Two-Family Residential District, Multifamily Residential District, Business District, rural neighborhood district, urban neighborhood district, and retail business districts. Child care centers are allowed in two-family residential district and multifamily residential districts within a non-residential school or church building. The amendment also includes parking requirements and definitions that are all based on the state of Alaska requirements. Also included tonight is a planning document entitled Zoning Practice Creating a Child Care Friendly Community. Our community development director, Chris French, has been waiting patiently to answer any questions that you might have about this amendment.
Any questions? Bo?
Just, please relax, Director French. Just a statement. I just wanted to thank the Planning and Zoning Commission and Director French again for just getting us up to speed on code. Seems like almost weekly we're getting an update on code revisions that are getting us modernized and ready for expansion and growth. Clearly, childcare is an extremely needed service here in town, so I'm glad that Director French got us ahead of that growth. I do feel that that's coming, whether it's private or small in nature or a much larger operation. I think childcare, the opportunities there for folks to pursue that. So I appreciate Director French and P&Z for making sure we're prepared for that.
Thank you. Then after that is other items. There'll be the administration of oath of office to newly elected officials, presentation to outgoing elected officials. There'll be the appointment to the Kodiak Island Borough Assembly to fill the vacant seat. Administration of oath of office to newly appointed assembly member. And then there's an executive session related to evaluation of the legal counsel applications on there. So next is manager's comments. Of who?
You? Maybe the clerk.
Well, I'd just like to know. I just read that. I'm trying to figure out what you're questioning.
Well, my question is, once we administer, when does your...
The offices, we end on Sunday night at midnight, basically. Monday morning, 12:01, which would be October 20th is when they take office.
All right, so we still have a couple more days.
Yep.
Okay.
So, manager's report, Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Patricia Valerio Carroyal and I walked the landfill fence perimeter with the contractor on Monday afternoon and learned about the proposed fixes to where the bears are currently entering and exiting the landfill fence. Carl had a great history of where bears go in and out and how they have been trying to blocking them and the lengths which they will go to get into the landfill. We met with the contractor for the Regional Solid Waste Management Plan about both the outreach and how to deal with illegal dumping and how the plan should address those issues. Attended the monthly meeting for the Kodiak Economic Development Corporation, who's currently in their strategic plan process. They're interested in the possibility of office space in North Star if that opportunity presents itself. Finished working on the planning for the Alaska Municipal Manager Annual Meeting that is happening on 8th and 9th, right before AML in Anchorage. The Executive Committee of the Alaska Municipal Manager Association is also attending the International City County Management Association Conference this year. Time Clock Plus, the Finance Department and Managers Department are doing a trial run of the hardware this pay period. Community Development is going to be added next pay period, plus a member of the project's office to test the functionality of the software. I walk right by that machine so many times, and I cannot remember to swipe. And so we use my timesheet as an example, and I had a segment that was 118 hours that I worked. And it's been very healthy because I cannot get mad at anyone for not remembering to swipe in and out for a while, because it really has taken a while to change habits. Recurrent recruitments have not changed at all. In Community Development, Planning and Zoning Commission held a work session last night. The commission received training on the history of city planning in the U.S., land use planning, and reviewed the format and organization of staff reports. There was also a discussion to add the code amendment related to short-term rental definitions to the November meeting. Packet review for October 15th regular meeting also covered the parking variance for the Maritime Museum. We had our open staff for the Parks, Recreation, and Trails yesterday from 10 to 4. We had 13 people attend and provide inputs on parks and recreational facilities. That trail survey is still open. The address is listed in the manager's report, and it will close on Friday, October 31st. The Russian River and Sergeant Creek Bridge Replacement Pell Study is going to be having a open house or an in-person public meeting on November 4th from 5 to 7 at the Women's Bay Fire Hall. Hopefully we'll get some folks from that area to come out and ask questions about what that bridge replacement looks like. In assessing, we still have the same 13 senior citizens and disabled veterans that are undetermined. We have village trips with CANA scheduled for the week of November 17th. In-town applications with CANA on December 3rd and 10th, and in-town application help at the Senior Center on November 19th, December 19th, and January 13th. As you know, our assessors have been working in villages and remote areas. They were able to go to Port Lions yesterday, and they'll need one more day out in Port Lions to finish up Port Lions. Staff has meetings with Tyler every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the next 5 weeks. You guys got to meet Jeff last week that was here. Sherry will be here next week. She's the finance department guru, so she'll be working with finance on their portion of the software next week. This upcoming Wednesday, October 15th, is the next payment deadline for those wishing to make full payments, or if you were making half payments and you missed the August 15th deadline, please get in and make the October 15th deadline. In information technology, IT has been working on RFP proposals that were submitted for the Alaska State and Local Cybersecurity Grant Program. They're also working with both assessing and finance and transferring from Harris into Tyler, and working on the installation of a time clock over at KFRC for our folks that work over there. They will also have their own at the leachate treatment plant and the Baylor building out at the landfill. And they are also working on configuring new laptops for incoming assembly members. In engineering and facilities, for both long-term care center and the Carluck fuel oil spills, we're going to have to hire third parties, conduct more sampling, and it's very possible we'll be installing new monitoring wells in both locations. There are no changes with the KFRC info. The Chiniak School painting inspection is going to be conducted on October 10th. The anticipated deadline is October 31st. As long as the weather cooperates, we should be looking very good for that. For small projects coming up, we've had problems with the North Star fire alarm inspection. Taylor Fire conducted an inspection of the North Star building on October 8th, and the system is back to normal operation. It's kind of weird that I would include a fire alarm inspection for you, but that has been such a hot topic with that building. I wanted you to see for yourselves what was going on with that. We asked the little dribblers to not meet there both tonight and Saturday because we were having so many problems with that alarm panel, but now it is back up and running and the little dribblers are back in the building, so it's back to being used. The boilers were both down at North Star. They've been repaired by KAB maintenance staff. The contractor has suggested a full burner replacement at the cost of $24,867.50. We are in the second to last extension with our contractor before their labor rates will double. So we're looking at getting that done while we're still under that contract. Other contracts that are coming up for renewal rebid, the KIB facilities contract rebid. Staff issued a rebid package on the 18th. A mandatory pre-bid meeting was held on the 6th, and bidder questions are due on the 10th. And bid packages are due by October 20th. We spent some time today answering the questions that we had, so we're ready to go to answer those questions. We also are working on LTP sample testing, janitorial services for our facilities, the solid waste management contract, and metals recycling shipping. Upcoming meetings are the Health Facilities Advisory Board on the 27th, and we're anticipating an early December meeting for the Architectural Review Board. And then that elementary fire alarm report is attached to your packet tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Scott.
You said that the Tyler people are going to be here 5 weeks. That's longer than the estimate was a while ago. Are we having difficulty dealing with the Tyler system?
So there's meetings that assessing will have over the next 5 weeks, and as we roll out that system, it's not as smooth as it could have been, but I think our customer service that we're getting is really good. We are naturally very nervous as our tax payment deadlines come up. So October 15th and November 15th are very big dates for the borough and collecting taxes. And so we have chosen to continue running parallel systems. So finance has Harris going and Tyler going, so that we can make sure that those payments are calculated correctly and we're able to make sure that we're not charging fees or delinquent interest or anything for people who have actually paid. So we are planning to do that through December, and hopefully once we hit December, we will be able to shut Harris down and be completely on Tyler.
Thank you. I have one more question. I didn't ask it earlier.
Go for it.
In the childcare stuff, do we have any liability in that? Have we talked to our attorney about liability? Certifying childcare facilities?
Well, Scott Brand Erickson is usually involved in all of our definitions. And for those definitions, when I spoke that we were following state statute, we just literally look at state statute and copy it into ours. And so our definitions are just what is an in-home versus what is a child care center. And it's like 8 or less, 8 to 12. It's just those are very defined by the state.
And we're monitoring the state on that. I mean, the reason I guess I'm concerned,
The state actually issues all of the licensing around that.
I understand
Right.
that, but we've tried to deal with AMOC, is that what it is? Marijuana and Alcohol Control Board, and they're years behind on their
Yes.
stuff. What about the people that monitor the licensing for childcare?
Well, I am not sure on what their status is, but they do have, like someone can't legally start a daycare unless they're already licensed. And so, interestingly, Jared and I on Sunday went to the world premiere of a documentary about the Kenai Peninsula and their child care struggles and how long it was taking them to get licensed and the frustration of the people who were trying to be providers. So we know that it's an issue, but it's also something the state is aware of and trying to work on. But there is several nonprofit groups in the Kenai Peninsula and through the state that are helping people get through that paperwork.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Manager? Moving on to the clerk's comments. Nova?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the Assembly. After months of careful planning and preparation, we have now moved beyond Election Day. We still have a few weeks left to complete our remaining tasks, which include canvassing on Wednesday, October 15. Canvassing is open to the public, and anyone who wishes to observe is more than welcome. We will kick things off at 9 a.m. here in the Assembly chambers. I want to take a moment to express my gratitude to our polling place workers and our receiving team for conducting the election with the utmost integrity and professionalism. I also want to extend my thanks to my team, Lena, and Irene. I feel grateful every day to work alongside such supportive team members. Even though elections can be exhausting, they always perform their duties with a smile and positive attitude. I would like to thank those who came out to vote, including the 330 who early voted. I am hopeful, and I think our voter turnout may be higher this year than last year's. I would like to remind everyone that the Alaska Municipal League Conference will be held in Anchorage on December 10th through the 12th. Please advise as soon as possible if you would like to go so we can make arrangements for you. I will be out of the office October 18th through the 27th for a records management training. The clerk's office staff members will be attending the Alaska Association of Municipal Clerks training in December. This is a reminder that your scoring sheets for the attorney legal RFP were distributed to you tonight, and they are due back to the clerk's office or to the manager by Wednesday next week, October 15. I also distributed the yearly boards and committees forms. Please return those to the clerk's office by October 22nd. And that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Nova? Seeing none, thank you, Nova.
You're welcome.
Next is Assembly Member comments. Scott, we'll start with you.
Happy that the election is over. I had trouble finding where on Bayside the voting place was. Turned around, there were all kinds of cones on the road and everything, and I thought they had shut it down. But Irene was very helpful to me and told me where to go, and I followed her directions well. I'm thankful that Senator Stevens and Representative Stokes were here today. I think we have an issue with next year's funding from the state, and I don't look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Larry?
I'd like to thank the candidates that we reviewed tonight to fill an open seat. I thought you all did very well, and we'd be lucky to have any one of you on the Borough Assembly. So I do appreciate you sitting here. I know that's very difficult. I'm very proud of our state representatives, Senator Stevens or Dr. Senator Stevens and Louise Stutz. I think that the funds that we do get are related to their leadership in the state, and it was great to have them here tonight. I'm also really pleased with the preliminary discussions we had about lands, a lot of good ideas tonight, and I hope that they could be implemented as soon as possible and we could start moving forward and supporting our community and the needs. Thank you.
Steve?
I'd like to thank all the candidates for that seat, for the ones who participated for participating. Thank Stevens and Stutz for coming here and talking and clarifying some things. Wasn't that pretty a picture, but I'd like to still thank them for coming and talking about it. And other than that, no comment.
Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I too kind of struggled with where to go to vote at Bayside, but then I saw the great big vote here sign, and that kind of helped me out. So, no, I wanted to thank or congratulate the clerk staff and thank our election volunteers for another great, well-run election in our community. As I said last week, you know, this is democracy in action, and it's always encouraging to, you know, I love early voting, but I don't do it because I love the Bayside volunteers we get every year, and it's my opportunity to go see them and thank them. But yeah, it's all very appreciated. Want to congratulate our new elected members. Thank everybody who ran. As has been said, it's really exciting to see people wanting to be involved in the process. I'd like to thank the applicants who were able to make it in tonight and for their thoughtful responses to the interview questions. Likewise, Senator Stevens and Representative Stutz for being here, for offering a frank and candid discussion. It's really nice to see elected leaders who are willing to tell the truth to the public and not what they want to hear. And the child care that we're voting on, it sparked a question in my mind. And I recall about 25, 30 years ago, the state made some very substantial changes to child care licensing that put a number of child care providers out of business. And I will confess total ignorance to where that stands now. But if that change in licensing is still creating a massive barrier to entry for child care providers, as we heard and as Dr. Ledoux mentioned, legislative changes, you know, the time is probably now to be communicating that with our elected representatives to see if we can't maybe find a better balance between regulation and in improving child care delivery. Finally, I just wanted to thank the borough staff. I fully recognize that every time a question like the one I just asked is asked by the borough, we get a quick answer at the follow-on meeting, but the amount of staff work that goes into providing that answer is significant, and it's not lost on me, and the hard work of our staff is recognized and appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Jared?
Thank you. A lot of great things have already been said. Thanks to Nova and the clerks and election volunteers. I had no problem at Bayside. I'm not sure what you guys were doing. They gave out candy at Bayside, so that's why I like to vote on election day. You get free candy. I would like to also extend my thanks to Representative Student Senator Stevens, and want to underscore really seriously how lucky we are that we have two legislators who work together so well and are aligned so well and have this just kind of political block to represent us and do some good things for us. So we have been the beneficiaries of that for several years, and so I'm very appreciative of that. I would like to encourage newly elected officials and assembly members to attend AML. This is a big year for AML. It's their 75th anniversary, so there's going to be all sorts of cool things, and you're going to learn a lot. So it's in 2 months, so if you need to request time off of work or whatever you need to do, it's so well worth it to go. And then, yes, as Amy mentioned, I went to the childcare documentary and discussion on Sunday, and the major barriers are, yes, at the state, at the licensing level. What we're about to hopefully pass with the zoning is going to help too, but it's the state. The state has issues. And I think there were several people, yeah, surprise, surprise. There were several people in the documentary that said, 8 years ago, they didn't have these kinds of problems. It was such a smoother process, and then something happened 8 years ago, and things have changed, right? Revolving door with commissioners, with state employees, especially in that department, has really slowed things down. Two changes that they've made was they did open up a mobile digital fingerprinting, which is important for background checks, and then a new website. That's and I think even that is like in beta. So not much movement has been there. So whatever we can do on the local side, and then yes, advocate to our state reps that this is huge, and it's also very fixable, extremely fixable. On the local side too, the benefit, I think what we saw in Kenai was that they had several a few nonprofit organizations helping people who want to set up a daycare in their home, help them go through this process, and I think that's something that we might be lacking here, and so find ways to encourage that. So that immediately went. I'm glad I went. That immediately kind of went to forefront in my view this week. So that's it.
Bo.
All right, I'm gonna table a few because I know everyone's getting sleepy. Just great job, Nova, clerks, election workers. It's seamless every time. I voted early, and it's awesome because the polling station's kind of peoply. But anyhow, appreciate all the candidates who ran and have interviewed today. Mr. Hickey, thank you very much. I appreciate your reports. They're very intuitive, and the layout makes it very easy for me to digest. A lot of us have a lot going on in our day-to-day, in addition to working with our community here on the assembly. So I really appreciate the effort that goes into those. I read every single one several times. I save all of them. I have them all just ready to go for reference. Appreciate your leadership and guidance for us as well. The amount of historical knowledge you bring to us by just being fully immersed in the process for so long is invaluable to us, and I think it would be really difficult for me to navigate the process without your guidance, so thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mayor's comments, and basically it's already been said, but I wish to, once again thank Senator Stevens and Representative Stutz for showing up here tonight and like they usually do together. And it was very informative to then have Mr. Hickey follow, and it just great discussion. And I want to thank the candidates for the open seat that we'll be looking to appoint. I want to thank all the voters for getting out and voting, and the clerks, both the city and the borough, for running the elections seamlessly. And wish everyone to have a nice weekend. Thank you. See you next week. And let's see if there's on there. Our next meeting will be October